Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to cover Tricentis TOSCA Automation tool. So this tutorial is for beginners who are trying to get started with this particular tool. And we are going to cover around 20 topics listed down here in this particular video. So after completing this particular video, you're going to gain an understanding and you'll be able to create an automation script, do the execution and get familiarity with all the basic concepts. So I'm going to cover everything from introduction, download, how to do the certifications, how to work with the different concepts of TOSCA and how to create an automation script, execution and all those things in this. In this, I'm going to briefly cover the theoretical concepts while we are going to focus more on the technical concepts, and we are going to work on using websites and doing a project as well. Okay, so let's get started. In just one more point to add here is, in case you like the content, do like, share and subscribe, and in case you have any questions, do mention in the comment section. I'll try to answer as much as possible from my end. Okay, so let's get started. So first thing is introduction to Tricentis TOSCA. So basically this is a tool which is developed by this company called Tricentis, and this particular tool, how it is different from the industry standard tool like Selenium and all, is this particular, for learning this particular tool you don't need to have a programming language knowledge. You can get started with this. However, in a very minor case, if you do have programming knowledge understanding, it is good for you as well, because you can create custom controls with it, but that's a minor portion of this particular tool. Okay, that is one of the reason for this particular tool to be popular. However, there are other advantages as well, so I'm going to list a few of them. So this particular tool is based on model based test automation technique, so in which you, whatever is your application under test, you use the scanning feature and you capture the properties using the modules, which is easier than the other prevalent tools in the market. Okay, now that is one or two features. Other than that, it provides a dedicated repository. It has easier maintenance. It has a lot of inbuilt function which you can reuse, and it has concepts like libraries, recovery scenarios and a lot of other concepts, which makes it very time efficient and very early adopter of automation. And to talk about the automation coverage, here you will get the knowledge. You can use this particular tool to automate not only web pages. You can automate mobile. You can create automation for your packaged applications. You can like create it for desktop applications. They have dedicated scan methodologies for Salesforce, and you can do it for SAP as well. So it does cover a lot of different applications. Hence, it is very useful in the organizations to achieve a end-to-end automation using this particular tool. And it is a licensed tool, so there is a cost involved to this. However, you get dedicated support for this, and scaling up is easier than a automation tool in which a programming knowledge like that ability is not required here, so that makes it easy. Okay, and it does have integration concepts, advanced integration concepts as well, in terms of remote executions using CI/CD pipelines, or it does give ability for own distributed execution server as well, which is called DEX server in case of Tricentis TOSCA. Okay, so that was brief about this particular tool. This particular tool is gaining a lot of popularity in the market, so it is a good time to learn this and upskill yourself. Even if you're working on other automation tools, getting a knowledge on this particular tool is only going to help you. Okay, now let's move to the chapter 2, how to download and install Tricentis TOSCA. Okay, so first of all, we need to go to their official website. So since I have a login, I'll just open it incognito. So you will go to this support.tricentis.com, and I'll put this link in the comment section, in the description section, and here you have to click on this register button, and you have to key in all these fields. Okay, so even if this is a licensed tool, they do provide a trial version for people to do a hands-on and get an understanding on this tool. So for that, the major requirement is you need to have a business email. So @gmail.com is not going to work here. So whatever is your company's email ID, you can use that, or if you have a specific domain ID, you can use that to register this. And once you are able to register this here, then you'll be able to log into this portal. And let me log in and show how does that look, and give a brief overview about their portal. So they have created lot of different tools other than only Tricentis TOSCA automation tool. They have Q-test, they have something for performance testing as well, and they keep working on new tools as well. So this is a common one-stop place where you'll be able to find all the details regarding this particular company's tools and all their offerings. Now here, if you go to this product support section, you'll be able to see what kind of different products they are offering. Okay, now they have this section where if you are facing any issue, you can post the questions, or you can read the articles, and you can go through their documentation. Okay, now for us to download this particular tool, the first thing we need to do is we need to request for a trading license, and post that you'll be able to see the download for this particular tool available in your download section. Okay, so for that, there's a particular link on which you need to request for the license, and I'll put this link in the description. So here, once you come to this particular link, you have to log in case you're not already logged in, and they have different concepts of gaining the license. One is called cloud license, which is pretty popular and handy, because if you're using this kind of license, it does not matter on which machine you are, and it takes your authentication based on your login. Okay, and second thing comes on premise. So in case you prefer it to download it on your particular like one particular machine, then you can use this option as well. I would prefer this option, but it depends on your need. Okay, if you request on this, then you're going to get a key probably here, which you need to key in when uh, you need to activate it once you download the tool. Okay, if you click on cloud here, you just need to click on this request cloud training license, and here you will see something called deploying or something, and this is going to take 2 to 5 minutes, and you can probably log out and log back in, and once you see deployed, you're good to go. Okay, so once this thing is done, you can click on this download Tricentis TOSCA either from here, or you can go to product support and click Tricentis TOSCA here. Okay, so if I click on here, you'll be able to see all the different versions. So they keep releasing like long-term releases, which they call as LTS, and short-term releases, I think STS or something. And here in the title, you'll see different kind of tools what they have. So we need to focus on TOSCA, and Tricentis TOSCA is something which we look for. I have 16 version in my machine, but their latest version is 2023.1. So whichever you would like to go for, you can select that accordingly. So all we got to do is we need to click on this, and the download of this particular tool will start. Okay, now this is going to be a bigger file, like around a GB and all, so you need to wait for that download to finish. Okay, so once you have downloaded this, you'll be able to see a file something like this. Okay, and you have to you will get the zip version, so obviously you have to extract that, and then you have to run this exe file. So if I click on this, the installation process is pretty standard. So I already have it installed, that's why I'm getting this repair, uninstall, modify option. But you just need to click on next, 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 and just agree the agreements and all those standard any tool process, and download the tool. Okay, so we have covered how to download and how to install. So we'll cover the installation part now. So we have downloaded this, and Once we have installed this, then we after installation you'll be able to see Tosca commander here. Okay, so if you type it in your search bar and you click on this, you'll be able to see Tosca commander, and there you will get a probably a login method. In case you have opted for cloud license, you can key in your credentials of the support portal, like the credential which you used to create your profile on their support portal. You just need to log in with that, and you will be able to see a pop-up here that license, like this particular tool has a license, and you'll be able to see a page something like this. Okay, similar like this. In case you have opted for on-premise license, then you will have to go to project, and here you will get an option in accounts, a setting somewhere where it is going to ask you to key in your license key. So basically, if you have gone for on-premise license, it is going to give you a key of that 16 digits, where you need to click on project, and then a license option comes in, and then you need to select on on-premise and key in that license and click on apply, and you will be able to get into this. So let me close this. Yeah, so here this is the license what I was talking about. Okay, so that covers our introduction, our download and installing of the tool. Okay, now we'll cover this certification roadmap overview. Okay, so basically, in case of certification, what kind of certification do they offer and all those sort of things, let me show you that. So if you click on this, you'll be able to see this academy section. Okay, if I click on academy, it is going to pop up this particular link. If you want, you can go directly here as well, and then you have to sign in academy.tricentis.com. okay, here you'll be able to see all the different options like discover Tricentis Academy, role based, product based learning, my profile and all. So if I go to role based learning, here you will see all the different type of trainings they have given. So one is like automation specialist, there are 4 courses in this, and then test architect, they have 6 courses, extension developer 5 courses, and so these 4 courses are in this. On addition to that, there are 2 more courses. So if you go here, and you will see they have classes and all, and they have all the different topics in this, and then once you complete all those things, then you will get a exam to give, which you can apply, and once you pass that particular exam, you're going to get a certificate, and that's how you can plan for it. Now it depends on the cost of this training. It depends on uh, on the connection between your company and Tricentis. So if your organization does have a partnership, they do offer free certifications, but there could be cases in which you have to pay for the certifications and apply for the certifications and get certified accordingly. Okay, so this was regarding the certification roadmap. You can become an automation specialist, extension developer, architect, and you can go for further certifications accordingly. Okay. Now coming to the fourth topic, TOSCA tool overview. So before entering into TOSCA, we have to create a workspace. So I'll just move this to the fourth point, and I will move this to the fifth point. Okay. So coming to the fourth point, workspace creation. Okay. So in order to work with this particular tool, first of all, you need to create a workspace. Okay. So here you will get this create new option. Okay. In case you are creating a new workspace, and in case you already have a workspace created, you can click on open and then select the workspace which you have created. Okay. So if I click on create new, I'm going to explain this thing a little bit in detail. So here you will get what type of repository you want to use. So Tosca provides you a dedicated repository. Okay, so you have different options. You can go for Oracle, you can go for SQL Server, DB2 or SQLite. Okay, these are the 4 different repository types it gives. Okay, so this is used when you're working on a multi-user environment. What does that mean? That means that your entire team is working on that, and you all guys are working in one particular project. uh, Maybe projects can be different, but your repository is similar, and everyone's work will be present at one place. Okay, so that is how it is going to be usually at all the organizations. But in case you're just doing it for a training purpose, hands-on and all, you can use this create single user workspace. So this was one of the options, and now I'll just showcase, in case I'm selecting, let's say, one of the common repository options, what all fields we need to fill. Okay, so first thing is connection string. We need to mention the connection string as to what our connection string is, and there's a particular format which needs to be followed. If I click on this question mark, it will give me the details, like you need to have the server name, the database name, the user ID and password. And once you have all these details, you can click on test connection, and if it shows successful, then you are good to proceed with this, and you can select any name for your workspace, and you can click on create here, okay here, and it is going to create your workspace. Since we are going to use it for training purpose, and we are going to use single user workspace, so if you're just doing a hands-on, you can always use single user workspace, but that's the difference, essential difference between single user workspace and multi-user workspace. Okay, now coming to the name for the new workspace, we can give whatever name you want. So I can write Tosca beginners tutorial course, and here you have the option to use workspace template. You should always click on this option. What does this do is, it is going to import the standard subset. So what do you mean by standard subset? So basically uh, the subset is something which contains whatever standard modules they have already created. For now, you can understand that there are kind of functions, you would say, which have been created by Tricentis already, and they have put it in a package. For you to work with that particular package, we need to import that. Okay, while creation of the new workspace, it gives you the option to import that as soon as the workspace is created. So you should always use this option. In case you have missed this option, this is going to be the project path. So since you have downloaded this particular tool, it is going to be present at this particular location, so you can always search for it and import it as well at a later point of time, in case you have missed this. So if I'll click on OK, then what it is going to do is, it is going to create a new workspace. Now it is going to do all the required things, and once this is completed, it is going to close, and it is going to give you the UI or the page which you are going to work on. So basically, this is going to be your Tosca Commander UI, and this is going to contain all the details regarding how to create the modules, and everything is going to be here. Okay, so that covers our workspace creation process. How do we create the workspace? Okay, so let's get started with chapter 5th, Tosca tool overview. So since we have logged in to Tosca, we'll be seeing the UI something like this. Now let me give you a brief overview. So here in the project, you'll be able to find all the different settings about Tosca, which version you're using, licensing, accounts, and all those things. Now here in the home section, if you'll go, you'll be able to see the project which you have created. So if I'll click on project, what would happen is, I'll be able to see everything in one place. Okay, now we have the option, since this is floating, we have the option to dock it here. So if I right click and dock as a tab document, I'll be able to see it here. Okay, now here you have the option of the scratchbook, importing the subset, exporting the subset. We'll go through this as well, and exploratory scenario, and all these options are available here. In case of view, you'll be able to see requirements, test case design, and all. And in tools, you'll be able to see buffer viewer, XTCS schema, and you have API testing tab as well here. So here you'll see that you'll have different sections like test cases, which would contain like the standards here. In case you have the module section, and you'll have standard modules. This is what I was talking about when we were creating the workspace, that we have selected to import that, so that's why we are able to see all these different options already populated here. However, we'll go through this in the next video. And we have the requirement section as well, which we are not going to cover as part of this series, but I'll be creating a part 2 in which I'll cover this as well. This is the test case design section. We are going to cover this modules, test case, and here is your execution. And we have issues, configurations, test planning, and all these options as well. But this is going to contain everything in one place. So if you want, you can work like this as well. Now let's say I do not want to see all these different modules. I can click on this to close this as well. Okay, whatever I do not want, I can close this. And in case I want it to be reappearing again, I can go to my home, and in section I'll click on this, and I'll be able to click on this, and this is going to appear back. Now again, in case I want to dock this, I can dock this, and similarly whatever I want, I can redock it. Okay, and you have to just save your work whenever you're working on this, and while closing, you can just close like this. And if you have created different projects, then everything is going to appear here. And in case you want to open any project, you can click on whichever project you want, and you can get started working with that. Okay, so that covers the 5th chapter, TOSCA tool overview. Now let's move to the 6th chapter, module overview. Okay, so let me launch the tool again, TOSCA commander. So let's talk about modules. Like, so what exactly are modules? Okay, so basically TOSCA, as I was earlier telling, it's based on model based test automation technique. Okay, so whatever you are going to work on with is going to be happening in a way that you are going to create a model. What does that mean is, let me quickly give an example. So let's say I have any website, let's say google.com only. Okay, google.com. Okay, so whenever TOSCA provides a feature of second, Google. I'm not sure why my browser is not responding correctly. So in case if I want to scan this page and get the properties of certain elements, I'll show you in case of scanning a chapter that how do we scan everything, but everything is going to get saved in case in as modules, and then we can put that in test cases and perform actions. So that we are going to take a look at that in the next few tutorials. Now here we are going to talk about the standard standard modules what Tricentis already provides us to work with. So here if you will take a look at the standard modules, you will have 3 different types of standard modules like T-box automation tools, T-box X engines, and test data service. So basically whatever kind of common operations we have, that they have already defined, and we can just use these to work with our application under test. So here if you see in first T-box automation tool, basic Windows operations. So for capturing a screenshot, for getting something from the clipboard, or for sending some keyboard commands, these all things are already defined. So this is one of the sections in buffer operations. So these are buffers are nothing but variables. So if we can create, we can delete, we can set, we can use a partial buffer. Here if you see, we are trying to evaluate something, some file operations we want to do, some folder operations, and you can execute Selenium scripts as well, kick off using this particular tool, timing related stuff, and then database, HTML, file, lot of different options are already available in this. Okay, so you can check out all of these, like Excel operations are there, PDF testing also you can do with this, and this is about T-box automation tools. Okay, now why they have segregated this, these are based on different engines. So so if you will take a look at this, uh, they will mention the engine, what engine is used. So in case of this, it is framework mentioned, and in case of this, it is mentioned HTML engine. So all those things will be mentioned in the details here. You can always take a look at properties and get an understanding on that. Now, test data service, this is a different module altogether in case of Tosca. So they do provide a place where you can manage your data, and that is going to be secured. So this is a specific section for that, in which they have the option to find the data, update the item, delete, import, export, and all those things. Okay, so that covers the module. Welcome to chapter 7. So we are going to cover chapter 7 and chapter 8 in conjunction. So we are going to get started on actual automation stuff here. So let's get started. So first and foremost thing is, Tosca communicates with a browser using a browser extension. So if you're working on Edge, if you're working on Chrome, you need to have the extension present in that particular browser. And post the extension is installed, we need to provide the access. So do make sure that the extension is having full access. In case it is not showing full access, you can click on this, and here you'll have the option to change it. Okay, sometimes this extension give little bit of issues, so a good idea to download this extension is not from the Chrome store. In case you do not have it installed, you can open any application and you can click on scan here, application, select that particular application, whichever you want to scan, or any sample application, and click on scan. In case the extension is not there, it is going to give you a pop-up that it needs extension, and it will give the pop-up to download. So you can download it from there. So that is going to download the right version, and then restart your browser and then try it. Okay, so that is the first setting which needs to be in place. Now this is for Chrome. Similarly for Edge and other browser, the extensions are there. Now coming to other setup part, what Tricentis recommends is your zoom setting should always be 100%, and your display settings also should be 100%. Okay, a good idea to check if you're scanning, like before getting started with scanning, that if it is detecting the right elements is, I'll just showcase using this particular example. So this is a automation mock website. So what you can do is, you can click on this, you can click on scan, click on the application, and once your application loads, you click on scan and probably take any one of the elements in this. So here if you see username is there, if I click on this and you click on highlight section, if it is pointing to the right element, then we are good to get started. So do make sure that these settings are in place before starting scanning. Okay, now this particular automation mock website has a login functionality, and then you can place some orders and you can submit. So there are a lot of different flows in this. We are going to use this particular website, and then we'll take a look at other sample websites as well for this session. Okay, so just a quick overview. In this you have different users mentioned here, and the password as well to log into this. Okay, so we'll get started with this. Now coming to scanning, so first and foremost thing is, there are different methods of scanning a particular page in Tosca. So if you click on scan, you will find a lot of options here: application, API, mobile, PDF, remote terminal, and you have dedicated scan for Salesforce files and all different options. But we are going to focus on application in this particular video. Okay, so what are the different identification methods? So there are in total 5 different authentication methods. We are going to discuss about all of them. Uh, but the first and the foremost identification method is to identify it using the properties. Okay, so before that, how to capture a page and all, we'll cover that. So if I'll click on application, what Tosca does is, whatever is open on your machine, it is going to pop up all those as options. So it analyzes your open items on your machine, and then it throws those options. So here we want to scan this particular application, but whatever is open is going to be displayed. Okay, now one thing to notice here is, if I'll right click on this, you'll see different options here: HTML, Vision AI, UIA, WinX, and then it depends on what kind of application is there. It is going to display .NET or whatever is there. So what Tosca does here is, whatever application is in focus, it'll try to understand uh, what kind of page it is. So based on that, it'll do a auto selection, but it is always a good idea to cross check this once. So since this is a HTML page and this is what we wanted to scan, we'll click on scan here. But let's say the application is different and you like a desktop application is there and you need some others. So these are different engines. We'll discuss about this in next videos. Okay, so now if I'll click on scan, what Tosca is doing is, whatever application you have selected for scan, it is checking that page, and whatever element it feels is right, important and all that, it is going to auto populate here. Okay, so here if you see, username, password and login is there. The thing which I was mentioning before, if I can just click on this and click on highlight section, it is going to show that which element it is referring to. So that is also a very good indicator as to understand that our elements are pointing to the right element on the web page or not. Okay, so now let's take a look at this scan window. So you have different ways, like you can switch to basic here, and then it gives the option to select whichever control you want on the page, or if you click on advanced, it will give you all the different options. So let's quickly cover this. So finish screen is something, if you're done with the scanning, you can click on this and it will save your module, or you can click on this save as well. Now let's say I want to directly select on the screen. So you have this option to select on screen. So if I'll click on this, and let's say I want to use this, so I'll click on this and it is going to capture that particular property. Okay, if I click on this, it is going to capture this particular property. If I'm going to click on this, so whatever you are clicking, it is going to select accordingly. Okay, now highlight section we have already covered. Whatever is in whatever you want to check, you can select that and click on highlight section, and then if you want, you can keep moving it as well, and it will give a screen something like this and highlighting the element which you have chosen. Okay, now here there are different other options which we are going to cover, but just a quick overview here. You have all the other different identification options listed, which we'll be covering, and here they have a methodology of self-healing, like if there are changes, automatically these properties would be updated, but this we'll discuss later. Now coming to this particular section, this is the filter. Okay, so right now we are able to see just 3. The moment you increase this to next level, it is going to include more and more elements of this. So see, if I have put it to second, to third, to fourth, now if I put it all the way to this side, it is going to capture everything on the page. Okay, now here you have the filter option, so you can search for particular element using filter as well as search option, in which you can directly just type something. So since username was one prevalent property, so if I can just search, I can search like this as well. Okay, now in case of content preview, if I'll click on this, it is going to see if there is any like whatever content is there on your page, that is going to be displayed here. Now coming to this select new application, so what happens is, if we are using this finish screen and we want to capture another pages, then we can click on select new application and again scan those pages, and obviously close. Okay, so let me switch back to the, I'll not save this, I'll again start this. So first of all, a good idea is always to follow a structured approach in your test case or module or whatever creation you are doing. So I can right click and here I'll get the option to create folder. Similar thing I'll get on the top as well. So we can create a folder, TOSCA tutorial series. Okay, now if I start the scan functionality, everything is going to get saved under this, otherwise it was going to be under this parent. Okay, so I can right click, scan and select it from here, otherwise I can do it from here as well. Okay, so you can choose either option. Okay, so here we have covered all these options. Now let's take a look at these options. Okay, so first of all, this is your main page. So here if you will see, this is the section identify by properties, and this is the most stable method. So we should always try to explore all the different options to identify an element by its properties. And then if we are not able to identify in any way, then we move to other scanning options available with us. Okay, so first and foremost is we need to take a look at what kind of properties. So you will have different kind of properties being popped up here, like steering, representation, technical. And since this is just a web page title, so that's why title is auto selected. Okay, now if the page is unique, then you are going to see something like this. The selected item is unique on the left bottom corner. The selected item is unique, so you have to make the item unique, but you have to follow a process that whatever properties you are using to make the element unique is stable property. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual elements. So let's say in case of username, I've selected this, clicked on this, and here I'm seeing steering, representation, technical, and transition. So these are different uh, different properties. Okay, now if you will take a look at this, you'll see that you have action point, context, ID is there, visible, is steerable, if the class name and all, whatever it could capture from this element, it has captured. Okay, so you have to first check here is which could be the most stable property and with which I can use to identify this element. Okay, now if you have worked on Selenium, so here as well similar thing is there, ID is there, and which is username, which is usually a very stable property to use. Okay, so we can use ID. Here we have inner text, inner HTML, and all these things as well, but it will depend. So if I say inner HTML, if I click on this, see nothing has been captured. Okay, but if things are captured, we can use these properties. Name property we can use. Okay, now in case you do not want to use all these properties, you have XPath property as well, which you can use to identify your element. Okay, now this is the first thing. We need to see whatever properties are there and with which I'll be able to find it uniquely. So let's say I remove this tag, I'll remove this ID. Okay, so see, you'll see this yellow option that the selected item is not unique. Since it is not unique, now if I'll going to pass any parameters, any actions on this, the automation would not understand on which element it needs to apply it to, right? So it is going to fail. So it's always like we have to find the element in a unique way. Okay, so I'll just select this ID. Now let's say using this also you're not able to find anything. Okay, so what could be the other way? So the other thing is you click on more and you click on load all. So right now you have certain properties displayed, but not all the properties associated to that element is displayed. So once you click on load all, you will see way more properties being loaded here. Okay, now you can always take a look in this if you were not able to identify with initial properties, and you can select accordingly if something in this section is going to help you find it uniquely. Okay, so that is one way. Second way is I can increase the filter and see if I am able to find it using the parent element. So what do we mean by that is, let's say this is not unique, and I every element will have some sort of parent associated to it, right? Unless you're identifying just the parent element, even then it will have uh, a top one parent element associated to this, right? So in this case, if you see, I have this div as parent of username. Okay, so let's say I'm able to find some property in this. Okay, and then using parents help, I'll be able to find this. So obviously I have to select something inside this as well if this parent has different elements present, but you can use in conjunction to find this. Okay, so let's say we'll go through this in the examples, but just to give you an idea, in case we want to use this but we do not want to display this, okay, because we are just working on with this element, we are just using parent to identify this. Okay, so what you can do in that case is you can click on this once, and then you can again click on this. So if you'll click it on 2 times, then what will happen is this will turn into something like this. Okay, now what happens is if you have selected an element using parent something like this, then if you once you move this module into your test cases, this is not going to appear at all. So this is going to be in background. Now again, if you want to remove this, you can again click on this and it will get removed. Okay, so that's how you use that. So always remember, first thing is whenever you are identifying it with the properties, you need to explore all the different options. Click on more, load all the properties, select all the filters, see in conjunction with what you can use. You can use XPath as well. So there are a lot of different options to explore here. Okay, you will get this option to make unique with help of Tosca as well, but you can use this as well. But if you're making any element unique using this, just cross check that what property it is using, because what Tosca is going to do using this feature is it is going to select whatever it feels like is the best property with which it is making it unique, but it may not be a stable one. So it could select location, it could select something else. So always manual intervention here is recommended. Okay, now we'll go back to username, and in username I'll just select ID which we were selecting before. So ID selected and the selected item is unique. Okay, now I'll just write this as login page. Okay. Now I'll click on save and I'll close this. So this is how your module is captured. Now if you go back to your module section and you click on whatever you have scanned, so here if you see, this is the page what we have scanned. Okay, if I'll double click on this, you'll be able to see, and this is the element username, and here it is going to list out the properties as well. So we have used ID, that is going to be listed here. Okay, so just to give you an idea here, now we can use to perform action on this. So I'll quickly cover just this particular portion, and then we'll see at the other different options. So I'll move the login page. I can drag and drop to test cases, and it will create a new test case, and this will go as a step. Or I can go to test cases, right click, and you will get an option to add a step. So right click on the test case, search and add step, and the moment you click on that, whatever you have scanned is going to get populated, and you can double click on that and it is going to appear here. Now whatever actions I want to perform, I can perform in this. So it's a text box field, as we can see here, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to pass an input, action mode input, and value as whatever test. Okay, I am just showing this to give you an understanding on how further from modules the flow goes, but we are going to cover all these things in detail. So if I right click and run this, what it is going to do is it is going to, so actually I'm not opening the browser and also this needs to be in focus, and I'll just wait for this to pause. Sometimes that this takes time, but all we are doing essentially here is I'll just close and reopen it again since the page was not in focus. So all it will do is it will go to this particular page, it will look for that property and whatever action I have performed. So in this case we are giving an input with a certain text, so that is going to get populated in that particular element. So here if you notice, test is populated here. So that's how it works. So this is the first method of identification in case of Tosca, and it is called identify by properties, and these all are the different options which we just discussed. You can load all the properties, you can select the filter all the way, you have XPath option, you need to look for the stable elements. So this is a very important section of this video. If you understand the scan functionality correctly, then it would be a smooth sailing for you going forward. Now the next portion which we are going to cover is identify by anchor. So here if I click on this, if I click on this like already selected module, and so let me create a new scan. Go to modules, I'll click on scan, on application, and we'll use the same page. So let's say this login is there. Okay, now uh, let's say I do not want to use ID. Okay, and I'll remove what other property, tag as well. I'll remove these two properties. Okay, now it is selecting some other property. So basically these elements on this particular page are having very defined properties. Give me 1 second, let me rescan this. Since there was no property to identify, it shouldn't be identifying it. But basically what I'm trying to show is the second identification method, which is called anchor. Okay, so let's say I use username for example, and I'll remove the properties here, tag and ID. So here if you see, this is coming as not unique. Okay, so we will take this example that we do not have any properties to identify this element uniquely here. Okay, this is just for example, though there are properties here, to get an understanding on the different identification methods. Okay, so now what we do in this particular case, we can identify it using anchor. So here if you go to this particular section and click on this, you'll be able to find all the different methods like anchor, image, index. Okay, so we are going to talk about anchor. So first and foremost thing with anchor is, how does this work? So basically what happens is, if I'm not able to find a particular element, what I would do is I will take any other element which is stable, and will try to find this particular element using that particular element's properties. So basically it is going to give a direction. So let's say we are using login button as an anchor. Okay, so login button, how it is going to go is, it is going to take a look at the properties of login button, and then it is going to point out that I want to identify actually this particular element. So let's see that in action. If I'll click on this, and login is unique, so let me do it like this. Let me select ID, tag, and this item is unique. Now whichever element is not unique, you click on that and you click on identify by, and then you click on anchor. Then on the left hand side you'll be able to see this particular pop-up. Okay, now it gives two different options to you. Either you can click on select on screen and you select the element with which you want to anchor it to, or you can drag and drop as well. So if you have the element here, you can just select on this, you click on this, and you click on identify by anchor, and then just drag and drop this to the anchor control. Okay, if it goes in anchor control, you will get a message something like this, that target control was successfully identified. Okay, now in case we want to change the control, we can right click and remove the anchor, and then associate it to some other anchor. Okay, now if you see, this username is displayed as unique, however it was not unique before. So basically it will go to the login page, and from there it will point it to the username. Okay, now here as well you have different options like auto, shortest path, coordinate, but that will come in advanced versions, like advanced functionality, but this is good to understand. So if I'll click on save, let me just mention this as identify by anchor, and if I click on save here and I close here, so we'll perform a similar functionality. I can just drag and drop this into the test case. Okay, so same thing, I have selected this, but if I want I'm using this as an anchor, so we'll just perform one particular action here. Let's say testing anchor. Okay, now the action mode is also important, but TOSCA automatically detects as to what kind of element it is, but it is always a good idea to check here. Okay, so let me bring it back to focus and try to run this. So you'll see on this particular page it is going to populate testing anchor in the first text box. So see, our test is successful and we are able to see whatever we have entered, and we have identified this particular element using anchor. Okay, now these were the top two identification methods in case of TOSCA. Now we have other identification methods as well, with image and with index. So those two other identification methods needs to be utilized when you are not able to find any element using these two methods, because those are little unstable. So we are going to talk about image and index next. Okay, so let's move to our next identification method, identify by image. Now the point to be noted is we should try to identify using properties and anchor, and in case we are not able to, then we move to image. Okay, so there are two ways you can do scanning using image. One is from the modules, you can click right, and here you will find the option to create an image based control. You can use this, or you can scan, go to that page, and you can do an image based scan. So I'll show that later as well. So if I click on this, first I have to define what I want to identify. Okay, so that is called as control in case of image based identification. So if I click on this plus icon, it will say drag the cursor around the control area. So what does that mean is this is the element which we want to work with. So in this case we are going to use password, so I'm just going to identify, like, use the mouse and point it out, and then TOSCA asks you that what kind of element this is. Is it a button, is it a text box, or is it a generic? So this is a text box. We are going to click on this. Okay, now it will ask that what particular image you want to identify it using. Okay, so let's take login. So I'll drag the cursor around this. Okay, so as you can see, it is pointing to password. So what will happen is there will be two different type of images here. Okay, so the first one you see, this is the control on which we want to work, and using this particular image it is identifying this image. Okay, now if I zoom this out, here you can see password and here you can see login. Now here in this particular section you will see screen resolution, what is my screen resolution, and what is the accuracy. Now since image based controls are totally dependent on resolution and accuracy, it is a good idea to decrease this a little bit. Now it depends on your scenario as to how many different elements are there, similar images are there, so you can decrease the accuracy here. So let's say I put like 85, and I'll click on save. Okay, so this is going to be my identify by image. So let me just rename this. Identify by image. Okay, now let's see this in action. So let me drag and drop this to the test case, and since this was a password, I can rename this as well. So let's rename this to password. Sorry, here I can rename this. Okay, now if I go to my test case, here I can input, let's say input anything, test. Okay, and since this is a password, you have the option of the data type selecting as password. So if I select password here, this is going to be encrypted. So the moment I click X out of it, it is going to be displayed like this, and now you do not have the capability to copy and paste it somewhere else. So that's how the password is protected here. Now I'll go to my test cases, and I'll put this focus in back in here, and we'll try to run this. So if I'm running this particular portion, it is going to input the password in the password section. So whatever the text I have given, as you can see that this is working fine. Okay, so this is how you use image based control. Okay, now I was telling about another method. So another way to do it. So if I go on this and I click on scan and I go to my application, I'll use whatever application. So in this case, this I'll click on scan. Okay, now whatever element, let's say password, I want to identify it using image. So I'll click on that, and then I'll click on identify by, and I'll go to image here. Okay, now here the same thing, the control image and the identifying image is there. Okay, so auto populates, the control image auto populates with the element you are trying to select, but in case there are not many properties here, this might be not displayed here, like something else might be displayed, and then you can click on identifying images and select accordingly. So see, whichever method works for you, you can use accordingly and save, and the process is going to be exactly similar. So two things just to note in image based control is, one is called control image, one is called identifying image. Control image is something which the element you want to work with, and identifying image is the image with which you want the identification to happen. And you can change the accuracy, little bit decrease the accuracy percentage depending on what kind of application you have, how many similar elements you have, perform a few dry runs, and you will be good to go. Okay, so these were three different methods by which we can identify. Okay, now the fourth one here is identify by index. So let's take a look at that. I'll click on application, and I'll take the same application, I'll click on scan, and let's take the username. Okay, so let's say I want to identify this using index. Okay, so since this is already having good properties, I'll just deselect those, and it is not unique now. Okay, so in case to identify by index, it's fairly easy. I'll click on this and I'll click on the fourth option. Okay, so the moment I click on that option, what Tosca does is it automatically looks for that particular element, and based on how many similar elements are appearing, it puts a index on top of it. And this particular identification method should only be used when you're not able to identify with any other methods which we have talked about, and that is what even Tosca recommends. So you see here, use index only if you cannot choose any other identification method. So if I click on this, then it is going to get identified using index. Now one thing to understand here is, when you take a look at the properties, so let me filter it all the way to this. So it depends on what kind of element this is, how repeatable it is, and in what structure it is. So for example, if it is coming as index 5 out of 7, okay, so that means inside that parent there are around 5 elements, and that's how it is indexing. So in case the structure changes a little bit also, this index is going to change. That's why this is not that preferable method to use, but there would be conditions in which you have no other option. Now here if you see in the UI, this is what we mean as properties, and in case of anchor you will see this button, like the upper arrow thing like this, and in case of image you will see a image icon in this, and in case of index you will see something like this. So this easily denotes that with what kind of property you are identifying your element. But let's check this out if this is working fine or not. So we'll write identify by index, and I'll click on save. Now since this is a username, I'll again drag and drop this to my test case, and I'll put in the new test case, and we'll put in something, let's say index. Okay, and I'll save this, and we have this here, so we can run this, and this should populate index in the username section as soon as the execution is completed. So see, the index is populated in the username section. So now we understand how we need to and how we can identify it using. So this was identified by properties. Let me just rename this by properties. Okay. So we understand how to identify by all the different methods. Now we'll see in the application wherever the scenario would happen. I'll show you identify by parent as well, how to do using that as well. Now you understand how to drag and drop and create your test case. So we are not going to use all these different properties. What we are going to do is we are going to work on this particular application, and we'll see whatever best property fits in the next few tutorials and in the next few chapters, and wherever the case would arise for us to use anchor or image, we'll use accordingly. Now this covers identification by all the different methods. Now I would advise, in case of scanning, try to scan different applications and different kind of elements. This is a rather easy page. Now we'll move to the next page and next page, and we'll see all the complexities, but try to practice this on different applications and expertise on how to scan and get the right properties. Okay, let's get started with the chapter 9, test case creation. Okay, so we'll take this particular page only, and when we'll go through other concepts, we'll build on top of that. Okay, so let's say our test case is to launch this browser and then launch this particular URL, key in your username and password and click on login, and then let's say we are performing a logout operation. Okay, so for this I'll go to my Tosca commander, and first and foremost we'll get started with module creation. We'll do we'll create a different folder for this. So let's say login page automation, and we'll scan the first page. So I'll click on application, and here I'll take all the 3 elements which are required. So username, and I'll validate that it is highlighting correctly. Okay, password is highlighting correctly, as well as login. Okay, so in order to select all these 3 elements to appear, I'm going to click on all these 3. I'll just click back on highlight so that it comes like this. I'll just write this as login page. Okay, and in case of username, this is unique, password this is unique, and login this is unique. You can always validate with what property it is becoming unique. Okay, so we are good. I'll save the module and I will close this. Now the second page, coming to this, then we have to click on login, and then we have to move to the next page. Okay, so we'll do accordingly. I'll go to my test case, and I will create a new test case. So you can go to the test case, right click, and you select this option to create the folder, and select this option to create the test case. So I'll click on create test case, and we can write login page automation. Okay, now we need to add this particular module. Okay, so first and foremost, I can do from search and add step here, and I can copy this. Okay, now in this particular page we need to pass the username, password, and click on login, right? So here it has already given, so I'll use this particular username. I'll copy from here, I'll go to Tosca commander, and I'll put the value here. And you see the action mode, we are going to talk a little bit more about it in the coming sessions, but this is a text box and we need to input. So by default input will be selected, but just in case this is not proper, do check this. Now in case of password, I'll copy this and I'll paste it here, and you see the data type is already selected as password, and the moment I put in this and I click outside, this will become asterisk, so you won't be able to see the password. Okay, now in case of login, it is a button, so we can perform action on it, right? We can click the button. So what we need to do is we need to put curly brackets, and this will give us all the different functions. So click is one function which we can use, and we'll close the curly brackets, and the moment we click out of it, it will display something like this. So that means it is correct. Okay. Now we can quickly validate this if it is working fine or not. So I'll right click and I'll click on run in Scratchbook, or you can alternately use F6 key as well. So it should key in the username, password, and then click on the login button. We'll wait for it to happen. Okay, see the credentials entered and it clicked on login. Okay, now and after coming to this page we have to log out. Okay, so we'll click on this. The functionality is we have to click on this three buttons and then we have to click on log out. Okay, so we need to scan both these elements, right? This element and this element. Okay, so let me go ahead and scan these pages. So I'll come to this, I'll right click scan and I'll go to my application, and here I'll click on scan. So for selecting the hamburger menu, I can search this here or I can select on screen as well. And this is recognized here. Now I'll just save this as so this particular page is let's say products page is there, so I can write like products page and I'll save this module. So in case since I have to scan another page, I can click on finish screen and then I can scan the next page right here. So just bring the page as to whatever state you want to. So you want this. Now we'll click on scan screen, and here I have to click on logout. So I'll select this and I'm able to see logout. So I can write products page slider window and logout is unique, so we are good here. We'll just save this. Now I'll close this and we have the required modules ready. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll put both of these modules. I can select and put it in my test case. Okay, so the first thing is we are logging into. Okay, so you can rename this as per your wish. So we can write like input username and password, click on login. So you can if you want, you can put it in two different steps and perform actions accordingly, but just for this video I've written it in one go. Now in this we are this needs to be up because we have to click on the hamburger menu first. So I'll do a rename and I'll put click on hamburger menu, and here I'll write click on logout link. Okay, now we'll pass the details. So here after logging in we have to click on this, so we will pass the value click. Okay, and here on the logout link we'll again pass the value click. Okay, now let's just check this out that it is working fine or not. So these two we have added and the state it was, the page was like this. So let me just run both of these and right click and run in Scratch. So here you can select 2, 3 or 1, whatever is your need. So it should click on the hamburger icon and then it should click on the logout link. So it is clicked on that and then it is clicked on logout. So our test cases steps are working fine. Okay, now if you see here we are executing these cases when our page is open. Okay, but ideally that would not be the case, right? So we would need to first open the browser, correct, and then close the browser as well. So for that Tosca provides inbuilt modules. You can go into modules and take a look, or a easy way would be that right click on this and click on search and add step, or alternately you can use Ctrl+T, and here you can write like search for browser, and you have close browser, and then you have launch URL. Search for the open URL. So I'll click on this and I'll put it on the top, and here we have to mention which URL we have to open. Okay, so I'll just copy the URL from here and I'll paste it here. Okay, so this is going to launch my URL. Now after performing these actions, I have to close as well. So I'll right click, search and add step, and I'll use the inbuilt function. So that is like close, or I'll search for browser, and close browser is there. So title means whatever is title, title is there on the page. So I can just write it's written swag lab, so I can write this swag. Okay, so we are launching the URL, we are entering username and password, and this is how test script is created. Okay, so end-to-end test script is created. Now we need to know that where on which browser we have to execute the script. Okay, so for that, if you click on the test script, the test case, here you'll be able to see test configuration. So you click on the test configuration and right click on this, and here you will see this create test configuration parameter. So I'll show the flow again. Go to your test case. Here you will see test configuration tab. Click on this, right click on this, and here you will see TC. Click on this, and if you click out of it and then click on this drop down, you will be able to see a lot of different options here. Okay, so you can define which browser you want to do your execution on. So if I click on browser, and here it will give me all the different options. So let's say I want to execute it on Chrome, so I'll select Chrome, and accordingly you can change this, and this is going to be applicable to all the steps since it is at the test case level. Okay, so this is how you create a test case. This is a very short format, but depending on however number of steps you have, you will have everything inside this. Okay, now for us to run, we'll try to run this. Before this, I'll just close this browser so that there is nothing open, and let's see how this performs. So I'll right click and click on run in Scratchbook. So this is going to launch the browser. It has launched the browser. It has launched our URL. It has keyed in the details. It is clicked on hamburger menu, and then it is clicked on the logout and close the browser. Okay, so here after the execution, if you will take a look, all your uh, test scripts have passed. How we can know that is everything is green. Okay, and then if you will have certain validations, verifications here, those all are going to be displayed here as well. So that covers the chapter 9th, test case creation. Though we have covered a very high level test configuration parameters here, but we are going to talk about this thing in detail. So let's discuss about test configuration parameters. Okay, now test configuration parameters are the parameters which you want to set for your test cases. Okay, so does that mean we can only mention browser here? No, you will get n number of options to mention here. So the easy way is just right click on this TC, and you can add as many as you want here. And if you click on this, it is going to give you most of the standard options which are going to be used. So like you can mention the browser version, you can mention Appium server, CI/CD integration, device name, like device name is for the mobile automation testing obviously, and then whatever different type of options are available, it will give you that. Okay, so you can select whatever is your need for your test script, and you can select accordingly and give the details here. Okay, now another thing what you can use is, in case the data what you're entering in these steps, in case you do not want it to hard code here and you want to pass it as a test configuration parameter, you have the option to do that as well. So the same way I've added the parameter here, you can write your own parameter like whatever name you want. So what we'll do is we'll just write user name here, and what we'll do is the username what we are using, or let's use URL instead of this. Let me write URL. Okay, now this URL what we are passing, we'll not hard code this here, we'll hard code this here, so it will be easy for maintaining your test script. Okay, So let me copy this, or rather cut this from here, and I'll paste it here in the test configuration. Now here you'll see the data is coming here. Now in case you want to use this inside the test script, how would you do that? So either you can drag and drop that test configuration parameter here, it is automatically going to populate the required syntax, or you can do it manually as well, and that is going to be curly brackets cp and then square brackets and then whatever the name you have given. So we have given URL here, I'll give URL and I'll close this, and the moment I click out of it, it is going to display in the format like this. Okay, now in case we want to validate that this is this capturing the value correctly or not, you have the option to do that in Tosca. So you just slide over whichever step you want to validate, and you right click and you'll have this option of translate value. So if I'll click on this, it is going to give me the actual value which is going to be fetched with this. Okay, so this is what we are entering and this is how it is being used. So we'll quickly do a run here. Obviously this is going to work, but just to validate this, so as long as it is able to launch, so it has launched the URL correctly, we are good here. So see, while automation you should not move your mouse, but you have the option to pause, close and all here as well. I was trying to do that, but it happened so quickly and it got closed. So but you have the option to click on the pause button and resume the execution as well as close it. Okay, so this is how you use configuration parameter, and you can define whichever parameters you want here, and you can use the standard ones as well. Okay, now there are certain settings as well, like there are synchronization settings or timeout settings that can also be mentioned in the test configuration parameter. Okay, so we have covered the 10th chapter as well. Now we'll take a look at action modes, which is by default going to cover this creation as well, and then we'll take a look at weights. Okay, so we'll talk about action modes now. So what are action modes in Tosca? Action modes are something which will perform a certain action. Okay, now where would we find this? We'll find this in the test cases section. So if you open any test case, you will be able to locate this action mode here. Okay, now I can remove this as well by right clicking and removing it from column chooser. In case it is not available, you can click on column chooser, and from here you can just click on this and it is going to display that. Okay, now if you take a look at action mode here, since this is not a proper, like this is just a higher level of the test script, you won't be able to see, but if you are seeing on the particular properties here, if I click, you'll be able to see. Now here you see input, insert, verify, buffer, wait on, select and constraint. So in total there are 7 action modes which exist in Tosca. Now what's the functionality of these action modes? These are going to perform whatever kind of action modes they have been associated with. So input, obviously it is going to just pass the input. Now insert is basically used for non-UI elements. Verify is you're doing some kind of validation. Buffer is you are setting up a variable. We'll talk about this in the next chapter. Now wait on is one of the commands which is used for waiting for an element. Select is one passive command, and constraint is for limiting your search. I'm going to talk about all of these things in detail. Okay, now we have talked about this thing previously, but here if you see, in case of username, we were selecting the action mode as input, right? So what it was doing, it was entering this particular value in this particular property, and here in the UI it was this username. Okay, so it's pretty standard. Input is used for entering whatever value you want to input in there. Okay, now let's say I want to use verify. Okay, where can we use that? So basically you can use it anywhere, but we would need to we can try to find out one of the validations here. So let's say in username only if I want to verify. So if I'll click on this, if I'll click on verify, okay, The moment you click on verify, here you will get this option, and if I click on this, it will give me certain options to validate it. Okay, now there are, depending on what kind of property it is, what kind of details it has captured, based on that it is going to pop out these options. Okay, usually you'll see all these 4 options. Sometimes you might not see in a text as well. Okay, now when we talk about exist, enabled and visible, okay, so these are going to be derived by the boolean values. Okay, so first thing is, let's say we take it visible. Okay, and here what I mean by boolean is I have to mention either true or false here. Okay, now if I put true here, and let me disable the remaining steps, because we are just trying to understand right now what is verify command or how does it work. Okay, so let me disable this, and here we are validating just the username. I will remove this as well, because otherwise it will go to the next page, right? So we just need this. We can try to run this by executing the entire script, or we can just run this particular step as well, right? So I'll just run this to save time, and so once this runs in the execution scratchbook section, you will see that now the login info is getting populated. Okay, now if I click on this 3 dots, here you will see the expected value is true and the actual value is true. Okay, so this works on boolean values. Okay, what it has done is it has gone and looked for the property, and if it was visible, then it has passed the script. Okay, now this was for visible. Now let's say where would I use exist? Okay, so let's say the element does exist on your page, but it is not visible. At that point you can use exist as well. So dot exist is equal to true. Okay, that's where exist is used. Now enabled, where do we use enable? So you will see sometimes in the pages where the buttons are enabled after entering something, or it is disabled, and some form of validation goes through and then it becomes enabled. So you can validate if a certain button is enabled or not. So you can use enabled is equal to true or false based on your condition. Okay, now if the inner text is captured for a particular property, then you will be able to see this option as well, inner text. Okay, now in this case I can mention what is my inner text. Okay, so usually it should be something like this. In case even if the spelling is wrong, it is going to fail and we'll be able to see this. So here you can validate with actual inner text property. Okay, so if I run this, so see this is failing. Most likely it should be case sensitive issue. So here you see verification has failed is coming, and if I click on this, the actual value it is not picking. So basically the inner text is not going to work, because the module, when we have captured this module, in the inner text there was nothing. Now we can validate that. If I go to this, there shouldn't be a property inner text here. So here if we see, there is no inner text, right? So that's why it is giving blank there. Okay, now if the inner text property is present, then whatever name is there you can mention it here. Okay, now can we use only these standard things for verification? No, we can use other properties as well. Not all of them, but lot of different properties we can use. Like we can use outer text as well. Now in case you want to write something like that, you can either select in the flow like this, and you can change this accordingly here, equal to, not equal to, or you can just write it. So it goes like dot, and if I'll write outer text equal to, and then whatever value, let's say I'm writing test. Okay, so similarly like this, whatever kind of validations you need to perform, you can perform it accordingly. Okay, now let's move to the next action mode. Buffer is there. I'm going to talk about this thing is the next chapter, so we'll skip this. Similarly, wait on is something we are going to discuss in the waits chapter, but let me give you a brief idea. So basically what happens is, when I select wait on, I can use this particular action mode to wait for this particular property to be available or appearing on that page before an action is taken. This is a high level why wait on is used. We'll discuss about it in the waits chapter. Okay. Now coming to this select section. Okay. Now when is select action mode used? So select action mode is basically a passive action mode. So when does this kind of scenario happen? So whenever you will see a structure in which you'll have some parent and some childs are there, and you want to perform any kind of action on the child element, then by default the parent will be selected. That's how it will be able to traverse to the child element, right? In that case, select command is used. So let me try to see if I can capture any one of the we can try to move to the next page and see if we can get something. So sorry, let me put standard user secret underscore sauce. Okay, now let's try to see if this comes in the parent this thing. Let's start the fire up the scan. We'll try to find out something like that to understand the select action mode in a better way. Okay, so my page is loaded. I'll hit on scan, and here I can take probably this sauce labs backpack. Let me highlight. Okay, this is coming like this, and if I use this, both of these things become unique. Yes. Okay, so we can take this. Let me give you an idea what I am doing. So basically I have selected this particular image and I have identified it using the parent. So I can bring that back. 1 second. Okay, so here if I click on this, it is highlighting on this, and if I click on this, it is highlighting using the link. Okay, but let's say I want to validate the image. Okay, so let me move this, and the thing which I was talking about parent, so with this it is able to identify it uniquely, because if I'll select this alone, then it is not unique. Okay, now let's say I want to use I want to perform an action on this particular element. Okay, not on this. Okay, so I'll just say select action mode, and I'll save this. I will close this, and let's pull this in our test case. So drag and drop, and we can use it anywhere. So here if you see, if I want to perform, let's say, action in this, verify if the image exists or not. So if I select exist is equal to true, so see, by default select is selected in this case. Okay, the same thing would happen when you're working with web tables, or there would be a lot of different scenarios wherever the structure is in a way, then this by default action mode will be selected. So this is a passive action mode which is not actually doing something but actually helping just to traverse through the element structure. Okay, I'll just show this. If I delete this, see, the below thing is also deleted. Now again, if I select this and I put like, the moment I selected this, you see this select has populated. Okay, if I select like this, so there would be a lot of cases in which you need to work in a similar way. Okay, now this image is there. Let's try to run this and see. So if I run this, it is passing, and if you'll see the scratch book, it has gone from this to this, and here you see the verification is successful. Okay, so this is how the select action mode is used. Now what are the other action modes? So another action mode is constraint. Okay, now constraint action mode is basically used to limit the search result. So I'll make a separate a video on this. which I'll put the link in the description section. But this is little like I would need a specific web table, so we'll cover this thing in detail in a separate video. But for a high level idea, what constraint action mode does is it will limit your search. So let me look into this web element table. Anything is fine. So wherever you are able to see a web element, so it will look something like let me just check. Yeah, it will look something like this. Okay, a web table will look something like this. So in this case, in cases similar to this, let's say I want to search for some specific data. Okay, now what I can do is I can search each and every data. Okay, but using the constraint action method, I can literally put a specific search that I would need this, this, and this. So let's say in this case, I have expected date, issuer, and industries there. Okay. So if I do a scan on all the elements, and let's say I want to find who is the issuer, and based on these three input parameters I want to find. So I'll be able to scan these three different elements, and then I can pass that these are the parameters. So let's say this constraint is there, and here I can say, like, let's say the name or the inner text or whatever property is suitable for that. So let's say inner text is equal to in this case it is like expected date. So let's say the property is expected date. I'll put expected date. So what it would do is it will put a condition on top of that, that search only with this particular element. Okay. Now here, like, let's say if I use the ticker and MRVI is there, so I can mention MRVI here. Similar, something like that. Okay. So that's high level about the action mode. Let's start with the 12th chapter, buffer creation. So basically, what is buffer? Buffer is nothing but a variable. Now this is used to hold data, save the data, and then use it further for verification, validation, or identification, or any sort of activity. So basically, buffer in case of TOSCA provides us the ability to save the values. Now in case of buffer, we'll cover how to use buffer in a test script. Before that, if we'll take a look at the standard modules, and if you go to buffer operations, you will see 4 different buffers which are already provided by Tricentis. So we'll take a look into all of these. Now let's understand the use case first for a buffer and try to see how it works. Okay, so if I go to the application which we are talking about from the start, saucedemo.com, and let's say our use case is I log into this application, standard underscore user secret underscore sauce, and I log in and I'll navigate to the products page. Okay, now let's say this is the name of this particular item. Okay, and my test case is like I have to select this, then I have to move to cart, and I have to validate that the name what is appearing here is actually appearing here as well, exact same name. So that is the use case with which we are going to work. Okay, now let me bring it back to the original condition. So we'll scan this particular page. I'll go to my modules, and we can just create one folder called buffer creation or buffer example, and I'll fire up my scan. And we are going to capture the name from here. Okay, so I'll scan this, and we'll use the select on screen, and we'll use this. And here if you see in this particular element, this is unique, and we'll just quickly take a look at the property. So it is taking ID, it is taking we'll select the inner text as well. Okay, now we'll write products page buffer, and I'll save this. Okay, and I'll close this. Now what I want to do is I want to click on add to cart and then navigate to this particular button. Okay, so I could have scanned in that same page, but let me rescan it. We'll keep this separate just for a better understanding. But in actual scenario, you can scan everything in one page. Okay, so we'll get the add to cart button and the link. So I'll click on scan, and let's take the add to cart button and we'll take this link. Okay, we'll just validate if both are unique. So add to cart is unique, however the link image is not, so we'll see with which property we can. So here if you see, we can take the class name shopping cart link because there is going to be only one cart link here. So I can write that cart link and I'll write products page other elements. I'll just save this and we'll close this, and I'll click on add to cart, click on this, and on this page I have to capture this. So I'll again quickly fire up my scan and capture this, because this is what we are going to do. We are going to pick the name from the previous page and validate it here, that if both are matching or not. Okay, now I'll click on select on screen and I'll select this. So I have the link here, we can use this and we'll just quickly validate. Okay, so this is unique. Here we are able to see it unique, and I'll just write it as cart page and I'll save this. Okay, now once again I'll reiterate the scenario. So basically we are logging into the application, then we are coming here, we are capturing this particular name from this page, then we are adding this to the cart, moving to the next page, and we are validating here that the same name is being appearing here or not. Okay, so I'll just remove this so that the page is in exactly the same condition. Okay, and we'll quickly build our test case. So I'll go here, I'll create a test case, buffer example. Okay, and I'll pull in all my three modules. So I can select all these three and put in my test case here, and here I can write. So first thing we want to do is we want to capture this. Okay, so how do we do that? We will select the action mode buffer here. What buffer is going to do is, now it is going to look at this particular element and capture the property and assign it to a variable. Okay, so we have selected the action mode buffer, but there should be a name for the buffer, right? So automatically this is being popped up, but we can remove this and put whatever name we want. So we can write buffer name validation, whatever you want. Okay, now this is the buffer name and the property is going to be assigned by this particular element. Okay, now a quick thing is, if we want to take a look at this particular buffer, we have the option of seeing it in the buffer viewer, but there would be nothing assigned to this, or it has not been even created right now. Once we run this particular test, then this buffer is going to get created. Right now, this is what we are capturing, and I can just write this. Let's rename this and follow capturing data in buffer. And here next we want to do is we want to click on add to cart. So I'll write this, click on add to cart, and post that we want to click on this cart to link. So I'll just copy this this step and I'll paste this here, and I'll move this on the top, and here I'll write click on the cart link. Okay, now after that what we want to do is we want to validate on this page. So I'll rename this and I'll write validating product name. Okay, now here we have created our buffer. We'll just perform this step. So we are clicking on add to cart, so I'll just pass a click function here, click, and then I'll click on cart link. So I'll just write click here as well, click, and in case of this the actual validation comes into picture. So we want to verify this. So I'll write verify here, and I can mention the buffer name here. Now, in order to use the buffer name, you have to use curly brackets B square brackets, and inside this you need to put the buffer name. Okay. Now, if I'll do only this much, whatever buffers I have in my workspace are going to be populated here. Okay. But let's say the buffer what we have created is we have put buffer name validation. However, if I'll try to search that, I won't be able to find that because this test case, this has not been created yet. Okay. So good idea is to copy this name so that we are not making any mistake here. Now if I go here and if I put this here exactly like this, okay, I'll close this and I'll close this bracket. Okay. Now the moment you click X like out of it, it will show something like this. So basically what it is going to do, it is going to go to this particular element, see its inner text property and validate it with this particular buffer name which it is capturing here. Okay. So we'll see this in action. First we'll run a stepwise and then we'll run all in once. So basically here we want to capture this. We'll see if it is working fine or not. So I'll run in Scratchbook. So this should capture the name of this and put it in the buffer. So it is passing. We'll take a look at this Scratchbook, and here in the login info, if you will click on these three dots, you'll be able to see buffer with this name has been set to Sauce Labs backpack. Okay. Now this buffer can be reused anywhere using the curly bracket syntax and whatever the name is there in square brackets. So here, now we'll try to run the script and we'll see. So I'll select all the 4 steps and click on run in Scratchbook. So again, since I'm running the buffer name validation, again it is going to check and reassign the value. Okay, now it is clicking on add to cart. Now it will click on the link. However, it is not visible right now here, so it is on the top of the page. So we'll see if it works or not. Otherwise, we'll fix that. Okay, so since it was not able to see this particular link, that's why it did not work. Maybe the scroll was little down. So we'll talk about this. In case you run into this kind of condition, you can always use one steering parameter called as scrolling behavior, but we'll discuss about that in the next lectures in case of advanced one. So let me try to see if this works without fixing that, and I'll rerun this. So I've made sure scroll is on the top, and I'll try to rerun this again. So it should click on add to cart, then it should click on that link. Okay, so it is actually scrolling down, so that's why this is not working. Let me stop this. Let me make sure it is 100%. Okay, so I'll quickly show that parameter, and in case of conditions like this, so we have clicked on add to cart link. Now we have to click on this. So what I can do is I can go to this. Okay, my bad. So here I have clicked on this. I should be clicking on this. So one thing happens is whenever you're mentioning any kind of action on any particular element, so what it would do is, since it is present on this particular page, it will try to find it and it will do a auto scroll. So I was assuming the auto scroll was not happening, but just in case the auto scroll is not happening, quickly I'll show that. You can right click, go to the module attribute, and here you have the option to add the steering parameter, which I'll right click, and you will select the steering parameter and you can write scrolling behavior, mention top, bottom, center, or whatever way your application behaves, and then this will work fine in case it is not taken care by default. But Tosca will by default take care of this. It's just that the action mode, the action what we are performing, we have not entered in the right place. Okay. Now we'll just try to validate if this works. So I'll bring it back manually to the same state and we'll run this. And I'll right click, run in Scratchbook. So it will click on add to cart, and then it has auto scrolled and clicked on that. This page has a certain limit, maybe because of that it did not work. So I will re-enable this standard underscore user secret underscore sauce and click on login. So you'll be facing these kind of issues while you're automating. So this is the part where we debug all these things. So this is going to be helpful, these kind of scenarios. We'll try this again. I'll run in Scratchbook. And I'll click on this, and on this page it is going to validate that this name is this. So our test case is passed. Let's take a look at Scratchbook. So here the data is captured. So here if you see in the buffer name, Sauce Labs backpack is there. Then it has clicked on add to cart, then it has clicked on the cart link, and here it is validated. Now here you see the verification was successful. Now if I click on these three dots, you see this was the expected value and this is the actual value. So our test case has been passed. So this is one use case in which buffer is used. Okay. Now, does that mean that we can only use like some values to assign, or it automatically assigns anything and we cannot assign any other property to this? So that is incorrect. In case of buffer creation using the element, you can assign it using other properties as well. So for example, if I right click and jump to the module attribute, and here in the modules I see that ID is also there, and we'll have name, we'll have value to use, we'll have different properties in case of different elements, but in this case ID is there. Okay, so let's say I want to use this. How would I do that? I'll go to my test case. Instead of straight mentioning the value like this, I'll say a specific property to be used. So I'll write ID here and on the left side, and I'll click like this. So what will happen is, it is telling the script is going to send a command in a way that buffer the value with the name this and use the value which is mentioned in this particular property. Okay, so since we are just dealing with this, I'll take this particular example and I'll move this back to our original state, and this should capture the ID value. So if I run this in Scratchbook, whatever the ID property, it was something like product img link or something like that, it was there. So it has passed. Now if I go to this, here you see the buffer name has been set to item 4 title link. Okay, so you can set the buffer values accordingly, dot outer text or whatever you want. Just check that whatever value works here, it will be assigned to this. Okay, now this is one way you can create the buffer accordingly and you can reuse it. Okay, now how to see where like what details currently I have in the buffer. Okay, so for that you go to this view section, you go to this tools and you will see this buffer viewer. If I'll click on this, you will see whatever buffers are being used in this particular workspace. Okay, so our name is buffer name validation. So you see buffer name validation has this particular value assigned to it. So in case you want to check, you can check accordingly like this. Okay, now initially this was taking another value, right? It was taking Sauce Labs backpack. So if I remove this and run this again, then what is going, if I remove, like let's say I'll remove the ID part here, and if I run this again, then what it is going to do is whatever value it has before, it is going to override that particular value. Okay, so that's how buffer is used in the test scripts. Now TOSCA does provide different modules, so I'll go to which we talked little bit in the initial part. So you go to standard modules, you go to T-box automation tools, and here in the buffer operations you have 4 different buffers. So let me just copy these and I will go to my test case and I'll put it in this only. So basically T-box name to buffer, this is a different kind of module which is used to extract the test case name. So we are not going to discuss this because this is not going to be applicable in case of Scratchbook. It is going to be applicable in case of execution, and we extract the test case name using this particular buffer. So we'll talk about this in the advanced sections. Now whenever buffers are created, those take the memory because it saves locally, it saves locally uh, in your automation tool. So basically it consumes the memory. So good idea to delete the buffers as well. Okay, so you, for that you can use tbox delete buffer, and here you can just mention the name of the buffer. So we'll check this in action. I will take this buffer name validation is what we have created. We'll go to delete buffer, and here we'll put something like this, and if I run this, and we'll try to see if it is deleted correctly or not. So for that, here you will see buffer name this was successfully deleted. However, for us to validate, we can go to buffer viewer and try to see. So right now we are not able to see anything called buffer name. Okay, so you can always use tbox delete buffer in your test cases accordingly in case you want to delete the buffers as well. Okay, now let's say we do not have a test like a module captured where you're creating the buffers like this. So you can use tbox set buffer as well. So here the buffer name goes. In this case you were mentioning the buffer name here, but in case of set buffer the buffer name goes here. So the same buffer I want to create, so I'll put that buffer name here, and in case you want to assign a value to this, you can assign a value as well here. It will work both ways in case you want to assign the value right now or if you do not want to assign the value. So let me write test here and we'll just validate if it works or not. So I'll run this and it will create this buffer and it will assign the value test to this. Okay, now here in the scratchbook, if I say go here, buffer with this name has been set to value test. I can go to the buffer viewer and see, okay, buffer name validation test has been successfully created. Okay, now there comes a concept of partial buffer as well. So in case of partial buffer, like let's say you have a text like this, Sauce Labs backpack, which what you have extracted, but let's say I am in the need of only the first 5 characters. Okay, how would I extract the value, a partial value from a buffer? Okay, so for that partial buffer is used, where you mention the buffer value name, what is the value, what is the start, what is the end, and where to end. So basically it would be setting up the pointers and then capturing the partial value from a buffer. Okay, now there is a concept of dynamic buffer as well which comes into picture, and you have the option to extract a portion of the data as well as a buffer, but that we would be discussing in advanced sections. Here we have covered the majority of the part, and since this is a beginner course, I'll be creating a separate video for in detail buffers, but this is about how to use buffers, what are where it is stored, how to delete it, where it comes into picture, and you should always check. You can always check the values in the buffer viewer, and that's how the buffer is used. Talk about the 13th chapter called weights, or it is called as synchronization as well. So basically why weights are used, let's understand with an example. So I'll use this mock website uitestingplayground.com. so here if you see, we have a section called load delay. If I'll click on this, it is not going to load the next page instantly, it is going to take some time. However, when you script the same thing in your automation script does not know that this is how the application is behaving. So what it will do is it will look for this particular element instantly, and if it is not finding this element, it will error out. Now in terms of our objective to test this application, the application is behaving perfectly fine. This is how it has been designed. However, our automation script does not know that. So in order to handle scenarios similar to this or like this, the concept of wait comes into picture. So what would happen is we need to tell the automation script to wait for certain period of time and then perform the next set of actions. Okay, now let's see in Tosca what all options do we have available. So first thing is, if I go to standard modules, if I go to tbox automation tools, and in timings, I will see this T box wait. Okay, so the first thing is static wait. So you can use this particular inbuilt module and you can mention whatever duration you want. This is taken in terms of milliseconds. So you can see, you can observe how your application behaves and you can add this wait. Okay, now this is called static wait. Now second thing is called dynamic wait. So why there are two concepts? The two concepts are because sometimes the application might take 10 seconds to load, sometimes it might take 15 seconds, and it might take 5 seconds also. If we have introduced a static wait of 10 seconds, then what would happen is every time your script gets executed, it is going to wait for 10 seconds. And in case it is increasing the time, it will fail, and in case it is decreasing the time, then also it is going to wait for 10 seconds. So what happens is that is not a very efficient way in terms of executing your test cases, because it is going to take the dedicated time what you have mentioned in that, and it will halt the execution for that particular amount of time, and that is not efficient in terms of execution because it will take that much time. Okay, let's understand with the example. So basically this website is there, uitestingplayground.com. Here if you click on this and then you click on the home button and then you again click on the load delay, it is going to take some time to load that page. Okay, so this is how it behaves. Now let's quickly scan this. So I'll go to my modules, I'll create one more folder, weights, and I'll right click, scan the application, and we'll capture whatever elements are required. So I'll click on scan here, and here I'll take home, and we will take this button appearing after delay. Okay, and I'll move the filter this side. We'll just validate both of these are unique, so we are good here. I can save this and I'll close this and I'll click on home, and we'll just capture this load delay also. So I'll quickly capture that as well. Right click, scan application, and I'll scan this. I can click on select on screen to select this. So we'll select this. This is unique, we are good. I will save this and I'll close this. Okay, so let's pull both of these into the test case. Let me create one test case here. So we'll write it as weights and I'll pull both of these. So I'll select both of these and I'll drag and drop into my test case. Okay, so the first thing is what we are doing is we are clicking on this particular button. Okay, so we'll click on this and we'll rename this to click on button, and then I need to click on home. So I'll just copy this and I'll push it up, and here I'll write click on home. I will delete this and I'll write here sorry about that, I should be clicking here, and I'll be deleting this, and here I'll put click. Okay, now it will click on the button, it will click on home, and then I want to click on the load delay. Okay, so I'll click on load delay. Okay, now here I'll do this. Okay, so this is how our test script goes, and let's say on this particular page I want to validate something. So let's say validating button presence. Okay, now here I can write verify, and here I can select anything. So we will select visible is equal to true. Okay, capital TRUE. Okay. Now what would happen is, if it will click on load delay, it will take some time to load that page. Okay, and at that particular time, since the button is still not visible because that page takes time to load, that's where it will fail. So we have to introduce wait. So let's first understand the static wait. I can right click, search and add test step, and I can search for wait here, and we'll use the standard module tbox wait, and I'll put this in between these two steps, and here I can mention the time in terms of seconds. So I have noticed it takes somewhere around 10 seconds, but for the safer side I'll put some 12 seconds. Since this is in milliseconds, I'm putting 12,000. Okay, now I'll go back to this. I'll see. Okay, I want it to be the next on the next page, so we'll move to the next page and then we'll kick off our execution. Okay, now if I run this, it is going to click on button appearing after delay, and then it is going to click on home and then load delay, and then validate again that this button is appearing or not. Okay, now it will come to load delay. It will click on this, and now you see that it is taking time to load that page, right? So that's why the static wait of 12 seconds, that is going to halt the execution for 12 seconds, and then your execution will happen. Okay, so our test case is passed. Let's take a look at this. So here you see, between this and this step we have introduced a static wait, so it has waited for 12 milliseconds. Okay, and then it has done the next set of actions. Okay, now this is also one way we can use. Otherwise we can always use the dynamic wait. Okay, now in order to use dynamic wait, we have to use the action mode wait on. Okay, so what does this action mode does is, it tells the script to wait for this particular element to appear. Okay, now what would happen is, here we have introduced a static wait of 12 seconds, but in this case, in case it is finding this particular element in let's say 6 seconds, then it is going to skip the remaining 6 seconds and it is going to execute the scripts. Now if you see, only 6 seconds is saved, but if you talk about lot of different steps are there and your test suite, then it will save a considerable amount of time. So always dynamic wait is preferred in terms of static wait. Now there would be conditions where you would need only static wait to be used, but a good practice is always to use dynamic wait. Okay, now if I let's say I'll delete this altogether. Okay, and if I run this now, so we'll validate. Okay, it is on the right page. I will run this, and now what will happen is, and even if it is like I was talking about the time reduction, even if it is going to take more time, let's say it is going to take 15 seconds, that condition also it will be able to handle it, because it will give that particular amount of time to check if whenever it is appearing. Okay, and there is a time to be set for the timeout as well, so that can be set in the project settings. You go to project settings and there you'll have a timeout, because it cannot wait on forever, right? So there should be a time limit in which it should be performing this wait on, as otherwise the script will become like, in case the element is not appearing, it is going to take forever, right? So there will be always a timeout settings which you can update accordingly. So that is the concept of waits. Here we have static, dynamic wait. Dynamic wait is always preferable, however you can use the static wait as well. Dynamic wait is used with the action mode wait on, and then whatever property you want to use. So here we have used visible, but it will depend on your scenario whatever you want to use. So if I click on this, you can use enable, exist, inner text. However, you can use other properties as well, like value, name, ID. So it depends on what kind of element is there and what kind of properties does it have. Based on that, you can use it accordingly. So that covers the chapter waits. Now next we'll move to the 14th chapter, debugging and running in Scratchbook. Okay, now we can move to our previous application. So demo.com, we have already scanned this application, so we have the initial steps ready here. So if I go back to my login page automation, we were opening the URL, we were passing the username, password, we were clicking on this, and we were clicking on logout. Okay, now let's say after logging in, we'll just perform few of the methods here. Okay, standard underscore user, secret underscore sauce. I'll click on login. Let's say I want to add these two elements to the cart and then move to the next functionality. Okay, so we'll scan this. So basically, in terms of debugging, and we'll try to understand whatever we can cover in part of debugging as to whatever issue would happen here. Otherwise, for the next few chapters, we would it's better if we like have more flows inbuilt into this for a better understanding. So I am just covering all those things. Okay, so here if you see, I have just added to add to cart, and this is our cart link which we need to click to navigate to the next page. Okay, so here I'll use the class name. Okay, so class name is working, so I can just rename this here to cart link, and this is the products page, so I'll write products page add to cart and cart link. Okay, and I'll save this. Now what we are going to do here is we are going to add these two items and then we are going to click on this. Okay, now whenever you are automating any scenario, you see what the function, first we need to see manually what the functionality is, then we should perform it manually once to see if we are able to understand each and every click and we are not missing something, and then we automate the smaller functions of it. Like I have taken this particular module, right? Now what I need to perform is I'll go to this test case, and maybe I'll create a new test case here. Okay, and in this we can copy the initial parts of opening URL, or let's take care of that later. Here I want to click on this add to cart. Okay, so I'll click and I'll rename this to click on first add to cart. Okay, I'll copy this, I'll paste this here again. Click on second add to cart, and here I'll remove this. I will add, click on this. Okay, and then I want to click on this cart link, right? So again I'll copy this and I can paste this here. Okay, and rename this to click on cart link. Okay, now see, this is what we are trying to automate, this small feature of add to cart, and then click on this cart link. Okay, now you will always scan one module and then try to perform your actions. Okay, and then we'll try to run. Okay, so we can run only one part, we can run this whole flow, or we can run the entire flow as well. Okay, now we'll try to see if this works. So what we'll do is we'll run this, select these three cases, and we'll run in Scratchbook, and this should click on first add to cart, second add to cart, and then on that link. Okay, now in case of debugging, we need to see that what elements we are taking, and we have to perform multiple dry runs to see everything is working fine. Okay, if it is not working fine, we need to find that what issues are happening. Okay, I'm assuming this is going to fail. Okay, so this has failed. Good for us, because we are trying to understand where it went wrong. So if you see here, click on cart, add to cart link, and it is saying could not find the button add to cart with the following properties. Add to cart with the following properties. ID is add to cart and tag is button. Okay, so here if we see, it is trying to find this particular button, add to cart sauce labs backpack. Okay, in order to investigate this, let's understand the scenario. So initially it was, I'll click on these two remove. So application was something like this, right? It was clicking, it was like this, but after clicking on this button and this button, the property of this link might change. Okay, that is what we can understand from this failure. Could not find add to cart with the following properties, because here it is saying add to cart. Okay, now what I can do is I can right click, jump to the test step, close this, and here I'll right click and jump to the module. Okay, now here our cart link was not working. So here if we see, it is taking first this and then this. Okay, so we'll right click, we'll try to rescan this and see in this particular state are we able to find our cart link or not. So we'll click on rescan. You can perform a new scan as well, it depends, but if the page is already, module is already captured, it's always a good idea to rescan, so you don't need to capture other properties, but you can go either ways. Okay, so our issue is with the cart link, so we'll try to see. So obviously these two controls will be unmapped because right now the properties, the add to cart button has been changed to remove. Okay, but this was working fine. We'll see this cart link and we'll try to highlight the section. Okay, so this is highlighting correctly, however it is not working. Okay, so we'll try to see, tag is a, shopping cart link is there, so ideally this should work and the item is unique as well. We'll see why it is not working. We'll close. I will not save anything because it is exactly the same like this, and I'll go to my test cases and I'll try to run. Okay, so see here I have made a mistake. I was clicking on add to cart, that's why it was failing. Okay, now I'll just delete this and I will put the click here. So that was my bad. Now I'll bring it back to the original state and I'll run this, and now it should work fine. But there could be like timing issues, load issues, or the property might changing little bit. The properties what you have used for identification is not applicable anymore because some changes have happened because of the clicks and all. So it depends on conditions like that. Okay, so that's how at a very high level you do your debugging. So you should debug your steps first, and then you should try to run your end-to-end scenarios, see if any timing issue is there, any clicks is changing, any other property, any properties are being changed after some particular time. So always do some dry runs with your end-to-end execution and inside your steps to try to figure out where the issue is happening, and once everything is working fine, just perform a few dry runs in execution list and you should be good to close on your script. Now a small point here is, in case of TOSCA we get this work state section as well, which says as planned, in work, and completed. So the best practice here is to initially, when you have just created this the test case, you can put it on planned, that is what you're planning to work on, and when you're working you should click on in work, and when you have completed you should change the work state to completed. So this will give a good idea to everyone else who is working in your project as to how the execution is going on. Okay, now we'll move to the next 15th chapter, chapter 15, inbuilt function usage. Okay, so for that I would need some text field. So let me quickly scan this page, and in the next page we have a few fields, so I'll be able to explain it better there. So I'll just quickly scan this page and then we'll move to the next page. So here all I want to do is I just want to click on checkout and move to the next page. So we'll just take the checkout, quickly validate if it is unique. It is unique. I'll just rename this to checkout page. Okay, I will save this and I'll close this, and I will move this to the test case. So I'll rename this to click on checkout. Okay, and here I'll perform a click, and I'll just run this step alone. And it should click on this checkout link, okay, button, and here we navigated to the next page where we have to enter first name, last name, and zip code. Okay, now let's understand about the inbuilt function usage. Okay, now if you go to this value section, okay, and whatever you want to perform here, okay, whatever sort of actions we want to perform, we have different options available here. So if you put a curly braces here, and you'll be able to see all the different options which Tosca provides you. Okay, so let's cover I'll cover briefly everything like high level, and then we'll cover some of the most important ones. Okay, so every function here has some set of tasks. Okay, so let's say if I want to select the first one, a day. Okay, I'll just remove this. So all you want to do is just put one curly bracket and whatever you want to use. So let's say the first one, a. So if I put the first character, you will be able to see Tosca shows us that what exactly this is for and how to use it. So here if you see, shows the first three letters of a day name. A day is what the syntax should be, and here example is also mentioned and the result is also mentioned. Okay, now you have lot of functions here. If I'll scroll, it's a huge list here, okay, for performing different operations. So here if you will see, you can use alt button, you can use alt click, a month, apps, b, backspace, okay, and then operations like whatever keyboard operations you have, it is having all the keyboard operations like F1, F2, F10. You can use whatever you want here. Okay, now there would be need in which we need to like perform keyboard operations separately, so we can use send keys. So send keys is used for sending the keyboard commands, and here if you see, send keys and then curly brackets, square brackets, in which you will mention the keyboard command. So whatever you want to use, you can use it accordingly. And the similar functions like click on screen, and all those sort of things are also mentioned here. You can play around with the date, time, day. Here you see sometimes you have to perform double click, so you can use double click here, drag, drop. You have mouse operations, mouse over, uh, see a mouse over is there, math operation is there, random regular expression is there, random text generation is there. So we will find n number of options here to be displayed. Okay, I can quickly show one of the one or two on this. So we'll scan this particular page, and this will be useful for the next chapter as well. So we'll scan this. I'll go to my modules. So these all options are inbuilt, which makes it very easy for us to use anything by default, because they have done all the, they have created everything, and you can just use the functions accordingly. So I'll use the first name, the last name, the zip code, and we'll use the continue button as well. Okay, I'll just move this thing here and we'll see. Okay, so everything is unique, and I'll write checkout info page. Okay, now since these are text boxes, we can pass some function parameters here. So I'll go to this and checkout info page. I'll drag and drop this into my test case, and let's say since this is a free form field in this particular application, we should be able to enter anything. Okay, so let's say my test case requires me to enter anything in the first name, last name, and zip code. However, I do not have the test data. What they are saying is you run this test multiple times and enter some random data into this. Okay, so here you will have random function already inbuilt. So here if you see, random text is there. Okay, and if I have scrolled above this, you see random text and the amount of characters you can mention in the square brackets. Okay, so let's use this random text. Okay, and then square brackets, let's say we want 6 characters, and I'll close this. Okay, now the moment you click X out of it, it should display something like this, which means it is correct. In case it is not displaying like this, you will have some kind of error in that, so you can take a look at that. So this should write some kind of random text on the first text box. So let's see how it executes. See, it has entered a random text of 6 characters. Okay, now let's say I want to enter date into this. So we have an inbuilt date function. So if I put this date, okay, there is a proper syntax for this, but you can use just date also. So if I put date like this, and if I run this, I will just remove this and run this now. So it should enter date in the first name. Most likely this application allows to enter anything, so we'll see if it works. So yeah, this worked, and this put in the current date, right? So this is how you can use the inbuilt functions provided in Tosca as to however or whatever the business requirement need is there. Started with the 16th chapter, reusable test step block business parameters, or libraries as well we call this. Now as the name states, this is reusable in nature. Okay, now when do we create reusable test step block business parameter or libraries in Tosca? So let's first understand the concept. So the thing is, whenever a set of test steps are going to be reused at a later point in time, at that point of time we should think about creating a library. Okay, now let's try to understand it with the application. So we were talking about sourcedemo.com. So here you see, let's say I have 50 test cases in which I'm testing the internal functionality of ordering or something like that. Okay, so in all those test cases, the common set of steps is going to be launch the browser, launch this particular URL, enter the username and password, and click on login. Correct? Now instead of creating these as separate test steps, it's just time consuming and not efficient. So the efficient way would be, I would create a library here, okay, which every team member can use for the remaining 50 test cases, because every test case is going to pass through this login page. Okay, in those cases reusable test step block or libraries are created. Okay, now does that only apply to login functionality? No, wherever in the functionality you see that there is something which could be reused by reused in the different test steps, different test cases, we can create a library for this. Okay, now there are two ways to creating a library. One way is by just selecting the test steps. So I'll quickly create a test case. We already have the inbuilt modules, so it would not take much time. So I'll just write library RTB. Okay, now two test steps are there, so I will just say URL launching. So open URL, and we will use the input parameters. So I have this login page automation, so I'll use this. Okay, now these two test steps are there, in which first we are launching the URL and then we are clicking on the login page. Okay, now what you will do is you will mention the URL here. Okay, and in the login page you will mention the username and password. So I'll write standard underscore user, and I will write the password secret underscore sauce, and I will click on the login method. Okay, now since this is going to be repeated in nature, we'll attempt to creating a library. There are two ways to create it. We'll first discuss the most efficient and then the second way as well. Okay, now I want with these two steps, so I can select these two steps and right click, and here I'll be able to see this option, create reusable test step block with business parameters. So either I can use the shortcut as well, Control N plus Control P. So the moment I click on this, what will happen is it will create something like this, a arrow thing. Okay, so that means that it is going to reference to a library. So if I run this particular test case, what it is going to do is it is going to actually go to library and see what steps are there and then perform those steps. So that's how library is created. Okay, now here the important concept of business parameters comes into picture. Okay, now this is an important interview question as well. What is business parameter? Okay, so business parameter is basically a parameter which is created to give you the ability to input your uh, parameters as per your wish in your test case. Okay, now let me explain with the example. In this particular application, the set of steps are same. However, if you see that there could be some use cases in which we can enter different usernames, okay, and get different outputs. Okay, so password is same, but the username could be different. Okay, now as a tester in this particular application, I would want that flexibility to input the username in the test case using the library, input the username in the test case as to whatever I wish for. Okay, so that's where business parameter comes into picture. Okay, now if I create a test case and let's say I have created a test case here, and what I'll do is I'll just drag and drop this library. Okay, so the moment I drag and drop this library, you see the steps and all these things are not coming into picture. Okay, here I'm only able to see the business parameter. Okay, so in this particular case, or in case of any library, we are not concerned about what steps are inside that, because that is taking care of this login functionality is what I understand. What I need to do is I just need the flexibility to input the business parameters. So in this case of username, I can enter any other username as well, logged out user. Okay, now how does this work? So let's understand this. So what happens is when I have created library using right click and just created with the business parameter, what Tosca did is it has automatically taken a look into the test steps and it has seen what all parameters are there. Okay, and what all input parameters it thought, it has already created the business parameters considering all those items as input parameters. However, in real cases it will depend on your scenario, but we would not need all the business parameters. Okay, now let's say we just discussed about this, so we're only going to take username. So what I'm going to do is I have the option to delete. Right click and just delete this from here. Okay, so I'll delete everything from here and we'll just leave the username here. Okay, now in case of open URL, I'll go and here you see this syntax, curly brackets pl URL and then close curly brackets. Okay, so what happens is this is the syntax. Let's say I create a new business parameter here, so I'll just cover that quickly here. Right click and I'll get this option, create parameter, and let's say I write test or something like that. Okay, now let's say I want to use this business parameter in my test step, so I can just rename this to curly brackets pl and then square brackets and then I'll write test here and I'll close with curly brackets. Now it is going to refer the value what has been provided in the business parameter. Okay, now this was for understanding. So we will remove the test parameter here and here we'll do in the open URL, we'll change all this. So I'll just put the sourcedemo.com in the URL. We don't need this, so I'll delete this. And in the login page we want the username, so it has automatically taken the password. Let me just update it. Okay, and in case of login I just want to perform a click X. Okay, now I can create a new test case just for a better understanding, but you can use the existing test case as well. Okay, so you can create any test case, you can drag and drop the library what you need, and in this case we'll pass just the business parameter. So let's say I pass standard underscore user. Okay, now if I run this, it should be entering So it will launch the URL as well. So I'll close this and I'll open a blank browser, and if I'll run this, it is going to enter launch the URL, enter username, password, and click on login. Okay, now these were only two set of test steps. You will feel like, why we created a library for this? So this is just for demonstration purpose. Now there you can create n number of steps in this based on whatever your need is. Okay, now this is one way of creating. Another way is, if I go to any of the folders, I can create a folder, go to the test case, right click, create a folder, and once my folder is created, I can right click, and here I'll be able to see the option called library. Okay, so this is the another way of creating the library. I'll click on this, and now whatever steps I want, I can copy paste in this. Okay, so let's say I'll take just any login page automation. Okay, login page, and I'll put in library. Okay, sorry, I have to drag and drop this. Okay, so once you have dragged and dropped, you see this is going to be your reusable test step block, and this is going to be your library. Okay, now if this is created, can I reuse it? Obviously you can drag and drop this thing, but it is going to display all the steps. Now in case of creating business parameters, how do we create it here? So in the library, you right click, and so you go to the library, not here, so you go to the whatever the reusable test step block is there, and you right click, and you will see this option called P, business parameter, create business parameter. So you can click on this, and here in case of business parameters is populated. Now right click, and again you'll get this B option, create parameter. Now you can create as many parameters as you want, and then you can use the syntax what I was mentioning, or you can drag and drop this thing as well. So if I drag and drop this thing, it is going to populate it here. However, it is going on top of that. So if I delete this, and if I put this thing here, it is going to take the syntax what is required, and I can use the other way as well. So if let's say the password, I want to drag and drop to business parameter, it is going to by default create a business parameter password. Okay, so that's how you create libraries. There are going to be questions in case of interview or for understanding purpose, like what is business parameter? So business parameter is the parameter which is used in case of libraries for you to give an option of entering the value at the test case level as per your desired requirement. Okay, now next chapter, which is template creation. Okay, so template creation, test case, design creation, and instantiation, these are going to be like contained into one particular topic, because for us to understand this, we need to understand all these three concepts. So what I'll do is I will create one test case, and this is going to be chapter 17. So I can write template creation or whatever we want here. So I'll just write template, and yeah, template is fine. Okay, now let's understand when is this required, why is this required, and where shall we use it. Okay, so in this particular application, source demo, we log in, we come to this page. Let's say I click on add to cart, and I click on this, then I move to the checkout page, and on this particular page you're entering the first name, last name, and zip code. Okay, now let's take a scenario in which you are going to have 50 different test cases in which the flow is going to be same. However, in this particular page, the first name, the last name, and the zip code is going to be different. Okay, so we can understand it like this. So like let's say first name is A, and last name is S, and the zip code is 123456. Okay, now we are trying to validate that this particular functionality is working for this particular user, and then at different zip codes also it is possible. So what is happening here is the test case which we are trying to understand is being driven by the data. So that is data driven testing. Okay, now that is achieved in this case using TCD, template, instantiation, and all those concepts which we are going to discuss. Okay, now I'll just show you quickly how this application behaves. So let's say I put 2, click on continue, and then I'll click on finish. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly scan these pages so that we are able to perform all these operations. Okay, so in case of template, what I'll do is I will probably copy few of the things. So we can copy, or let's create it from the scratch. It should not take much time. So first I'm going to launch, so URL, open URL, and here I'm going to mention, let me close this. Here I'm going to sourcedemo.com is what my previous page was. So I'll copy this, I'll put this here. Okay, and then I'm going to log in. So I can use the library as well, but we can, second. Okay, so I have the steps here, so I will just copy the login page here. Okay, and in the login page we'll enter the username and password. So I'll just write standard underscore user, and in case of password it was secret underscore sauce. Okay, I'll click out of it. Now in this page, let's say I want to add just this first option. Okay, so I'll quickly scan this, and I can just write here template tutorial. Okay, I'll scan this. I'm doing this set of steps for us to understand the TCD, the template, and instantiation, and all those things in a better way. Okay, so I'll click on scan here, and we'll just take one of the products. So I'll just take this, add to cart. Okay, now is this unique? This is unique. I'll go to add to cart, and we have the stable elements. We are good with this. So I can write products page. Okay, after this I have to click on this cart link to move to the next page. So I'll scan that as well. I'll click on select on screen, and I'll take this link. Okay, this is not unique, so we'll see with what we can do it. So this is A. We do not have default name is there. Shopping cart link, probably the class name is going to work, so I'm going to use the class name. Okay, so this is working. I'll write cart link, and these are the two things which I need, so I'll close this. Now after selecting this and this, I would need to just click on checkout, so I'll quickly scan that as well. Right click, scan application. And what happens is, let's say I am scanning only one particular button here, right? Just for the demo purpose. But let's say in actual scenarios you have not captured everything, and at a later point of time some things are getting added. So you can always click the rescan option and add the additional elements. I'll write your checkout page, not checkout page. Yeah, probably checkout page, cart page. Okay, checkout cart page. Okay, we just needed this button, and this button is using this is using checkout is using, looks pretty stable. Okay, ID is there, so we are good with this. I'll save this, and I will close this. We'll move to the next page, And here is where we are going to try to understand everything. So I'll go to the template, scan application, and we'll scan first name, last name, zip code, and the next button. So I'll click on scan here, and we'll try to get the first name, the last name, the zip code. These are going to be our 3 input parameters which are going to be changed. Okay, now everything seems fine. I'll write checkout info page. Okay, I'll click on save, close this. Let me enter some garbage value here. Click on continue. Okay, some by default logout happened. Okay, I will go to this, I will check out, put some value. Okay, here I just need to click on finish. So we can click on, we can just quickly scan this page as well. So right click, scan application, scan. So this will give you an idea about end-to-end automation of at least one particular flow as well. So overview page. Okay, finish is, so I'll click on this, close this, I'll click on finish, and then I can close the browser. I am just going to cross check once if it is not keeping the okay. So I was assuming that this website might create a cache and keep it. So we'll be closing the browser as well. Okay. So we understand the scenario. Now let's go to the test case. Okay. Here I can import everything. So I can just drag and drop this, all these 4 pages, and we'll quickly design our test case. So I'll go to my test case. I'll drop this in the template. And here in the open URL we are good. In the login page we have already entered everything. In case of product, we want to click on add to cart. So I'll right click here, and then we want to click on the cart link, right? So let's rename the test tips as well. Add the item to the cart. Okay, I will just copy paste here, and I'll write here we want to click on the cart link after that, right? So I'll delete this and I'll put click here, and then on the checkout page what I want to do is I want to click on the checkout. So I'll put click here. Okay, I'll rename this to, or we are fine with this. Now checkout info page, here is something we want to input values. Okay, so after entering the values I want to click on continue. So I'll click here. Well, these parameters we'll talk about this, and on the overview page we are going to click on finish. So I'll put click here. Okay, now after this I want to close the browser as well. So I'll go to my template, I'll search and add test step, and I'll write close browser or something. Close browser is there, so I'll click on this. I'm going to get added to my test step, and we can put I think it is going to be swag labs. We'll just check in the dry runs. Okay, so what happens is we have to understand in terms of template creation how to create a template first, right? So here what is happening is every step is going to be similar, however based on first name, last name, and zip code our test cases are going to be different. Okay, this is just for demonstration purpose, not an actual scenario, but you'll be able to relate it in terms of how the data driven testing works, right? So based on the data you need, let's say, 50 test cases. Okay, now I can copy paste this test case and input the parameters, hard code the value. Okay, but let's say in future I have to change this, so that is going to be a very difficult effort and not very neatly organized. Okay, so for that, templates are created, TCDs are created. Okay, so what happens is, since these are the three parameters which are going to change, we are not going to enter this hard code this value here. How, what we are going to do is, we are going to create a sheet for this. Okay, now even though if I've named this as template right now, I've not actually, this is a test case, this has not been created as a template. For us to create it as a template, what we can do is, we can right click and we'll get the option to create a template here. So not here, give me 1 second. So right click and we'll get the option in this convert to template. So if I'll click on convert to template, what will happen is, you'll be able to see this T option populated here. Okay, and why have we created this? Because we want the data to be passed from somewhere else. Okay, that's where the test case design comes into picture. But this is how essentially you create a template. This is how the template is created. Okay, so we have covered how to create a template. However, the actual implementation of this we are going to see in the 19th chapter. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start with the 18th chapter, test case design creation. Okay, so we have created our template. Now we'll move to the test case design. Okay, we understand the scenario of the application which we just discussed, like first name, last name, and zip code are going to be different. Okay, so in case of test case design section, and just in case you're not able to see, you can go to home sections, and from here you can click on this and it will populate. Okay, now in case of test design section, I'll right click, and first thing is I'm able to see that create a folder. So you can organize the folders, or you can create a test sheet. So I'll go ahead and create a test sheet here. Okay, now test sheet is something like you can treat it like Excel, where you input all the different data to be entered. Okay, now in case of test sheet, if I right click here, the first thing you'll see, there are going to be two different things in this. One is called attributes and one is called instances. Okay, now let's understand these things. Okay, instance is, can be considered as the number of different instances, number of different times it is going to occur. In that way you can understand. An attribute is the property of it. Okay, now I'll explain that. So if right click, I'll click on this instance. Okay, now we were talking that we are going to have 50 test cases. Okay, now creating 50 test cases is going to take a lot of time, so we'll just understand with three different test cases here, and that can be expanded as to 50, 100, whatever the need of the business requirement is there. So the moment I created, it has created this particular row. Okay, now I'll create one more and I'll create one more. Okay, now here in the instances, you'll see these are going to be your test case names. Okay, now let's say our data was driven by the test cases by the first name, last name, and zip code. Let's assume that those are going to be different regions. Okay, so this is going to be a test case name, so I can write like TC001, and I can write data driven, and I can write let's say Asia region. Okay, now in the second scenario, let's say I'll write TC002 data driven, and I'll write, let's say, America. Okay, and in the third test sheet, let's say I'll write TC003 data driven, and I'll write, let's say, Europe. Okay, now these are the instances which are created. Okay, we'll understand this. Before this is just the test case instances. Okay, now I'll right click and I'll create the attribute. So if I'll click on attribute, it is going to be displayed with this circle thing. Okay, now what are the attributes? Attributes are like the first name, last name and zip code. Now let me explain it again. So instances are the different kind of the areas which I want to cover. So in this case, we are taking Asia, America and Europe. Those are going to be the instances. However, in those, we would need valid data to execute our test case, right? In real scenario. So first name, last name and the zip code in our application is going to be the attribute. Okay. Now for us to create those, we have to first create an attribute here, right click and click on this. Okay. Now in case of attributes as well, I'm going to have three different names and three different first names, three different last names and three different zip codes. Okay. So I have to right click here and create instance inside the attributes. Okay. So let's say here I'll use just the country names as the attributes. So I'll write, let's say instances. I can write here FN Asia. Okay, and I'll right click and again click on instances and I'll write FN underscore America and I'll right click, I'll write FN underscore Europe. Okay, now what will happen is this attributes I have created for the first name, so I can rename this attribute to first name. Okay, now what happens is this is the attribute which is created and in this there are three instances which could be used. Now for us to use that, I can, since I've created the instances, I can right click and it is going to display in the drop down. Now whatever I want to use I can use. So if I'll select FN Asia, it is going to display here. If I select America, it is going to display here, and similarly I can fill it all for my test cases, same, different, whatever is your need, you can select accordingly. Okay, now just to keep it in view with this, I'll first select the Asia and in this I'll write America, in this I'll use Europe. Okay, now this is the first name instance attribute we have created. Now we have to create two more attributes, last name and the zip code. Okay, now what I can do is I can just copy paste this, Control C, go to the test sheet, Control V. Okay, so the copy paste does not work, it seems here. So let me just try it again. Okay, it is not working, so that means I have to create a new one. So I'll click on attribute, I'll write last name and I'll create one more attribute, zip code. Okay, now you have the option to enter the value directly here as well. Okay, whatever value you want to enter, you can mention that directly here as well. However, after creating instances, it gives you a very flexible option to select it from the drop down. So we'll take both the concepts here. Okay, so the first name, the last name, here we have selected this, and in the last name and the zip code will keep it same. So let's say I'll write world and I can write the same thing here, world. Okay, and in case of zip code, all the zip codes are going to be different, so I'm going to mention 1 2 3 4 5 6 and probably here 7 8 9 4 5 6, some random numbers I'm putting. Okay, now we have created three different instances here. Sorry, there were four which were created, so I can right click and delete this. But now it depends like how many number of instances do you need. You can create as many number of instances you want. This is you are designing your test case here. Okay, so I can right click and I can create, let's say, one more instance. Okay, I can rename this to whatever test case I want and then again I can put the details in this particular instance, because this is going to be my fourth instance. So here again I'll get the option, so I can use any value and it will create my fourth instance. But for this, we'll just remove this to keep it clean. Okay, now this is how you create your test sheet, and here what we have done is we have designed our test case. Okay, so test case design section, you create the test sheet, and in the test sheet you will find two options: instances and attributes. Instances are nothing but the different kind of instances which we are going to need. So in this case it is going to be test cases. So first we have created for test cases, and then we have created whatever attributes we would need. In case of attributes, we can always create instances inside them, which is going to give us the flexibility of choosing the data easily in terms of changing, in terms of managing it efficiently. However, if there is no need of that, if that value is going to be static, then we can enter the values directly. Okay, and now these are the data with which our test case is going to get derived. So next we are going to talk about how to integrate our test case design with template and how to create the test cases. But this is all about how to create your test case design and how to create the attributes, instances, and all those things. There are a lot of concepts in this in terms of filling in the data. A lot of advanced concepts are there, but the portion what I have covered is good enough for you to get started, and I've covered the majority of the test data driven. However, in case of advanced, if you want to understand different methods are there in terms of filling in the data and all those things, I'll be covering in different videos. Okay, now we have covered our 18th chapter, test case design creation. So we have done the template creation, we have done the test case design creation. Now we'll come to the 19th chapter, instantiation and creation of the test instances. Okay, so see, our data test sheet is ready, our test case is ready. Okay, now in case I have not changed this as a template, I'll not be able to associate. Okay, so the first step is I would need to associate my test case design to the template. Okay, so then it would understand that, okay, I need to refer the data from here and then create the instances accordingly. Okay, now just one important thing: if this is not a template and if I'm trying to associate these two, then it is not going to work. Okay, we can try to understand this. Why we have created a template is, it is like, let's say I have a template for a resume, right? And I have given it to 10 different folks and everyone is going to use that. Okay, so everyone is going to create the CV using the same template. However, they are going to put in their own name, own skills and own experience, right? So that's why the template is required, and here all the data is there. That is one example I can think of. Now in terms of associating this, what we can do is I can just okay, fine, I was thinking of renaming this, but we can just drag and drop this. So you can right click and drop it to the template. So see, I dragged it and I'm dropping it to the template. The moment I move it here, it is showing fine. Okay, like it is allowing me to. Now the association between test case and template is done. Okay, now in case we want to validate that, okay, actually the association has been done or not, what we can do is we can right click on the template, and here you will see the option jump to schema definition. So if I click on this, it is going to navigate to the test case design which we are referring. So in case it is referring to the correct test case design, we have linked it properly. Okay, now for us, we were having the need to enter the first name, last name and zip code from the test case design, correct? So what we can do is, in case of TOSCA, you can create a floating thing as well. So I'll use that, right click, and you can float this. Okay, and I can move this to this side, and I'll go to my test cases, and here I have to, let me move this here so that you can see clearly. Okay, so we have three attributes, right? And we want to get this data from the test case design. So what I'll do is I can drag and drop this thing to here. So see, I just clicked on this, dragged and dropped this into the value section. Okay. The moment I do this, you see this particular syntax being popped up: curly brackets Excel and then square brackets first name and input method here. Okay. Alternately, in case you do not want to drag and drop, you can write it as well. So this was the first name, this is last name, so I can just copy so that I'm not making any mistake in terms of the spelling, and I can write curly brackets Excel square brackets whatever the attribute name is there, and I'll close this bracket. So Excel is used for referencing the value from the test case design, and this is automatically selecting input, so we are good. And zip code, I'll just put it here. Okay. Now what happened is my test case design created, template created, I have connected both of them, and I have linked my data as well to refer it from here. Okay. I'll close this. Now what has happened right now is our structure is ready. However, our test case has not been generated yet. Okay. So first thing is your steps creation, then template creation, then test case design creation, then linking. I'm going to reiterate this as well again. And now we have to create the test cases. So see, you go to the template and you right click, and here, one second. So I'm just making sure that this is referencing to the right test sheet, correct? I will right click on this, and now we have to create the instances. So what we were discussing about is we were entering 3 different data, and based on that we are creating instances. So you right click and you click on these 3 dots. Okay, and here you get the option to create the template instance. Okay, just before that we should always check that everything is fine in our template. Okay, and the linking and all, Tosca also gives us the ability to check that. So if I right click, here you have the option to check template. So if I'll click on check template, if there is any issue, it will say that this is something which you need to fix. And since we are not having any issue, it is saying no errors found in template. So I'll click on OK, and I'll right click, and I'll click on these 3 dots, and see, the moment I click on create template instances, what it is going to do is it is going to give us this pop-up that do we want to start the instantiation. Now the moment I click on yes, a folder is going to pop up here, and this folder is going to have 3 test cases, and these test cases names are coming from the test case design. Okay, now my test case design is somehow closed, so I'll just bring it back. I'll go to home, view, tools, test cases, one second, section, and I'll click on test case design. Okay. Now here if you see, we have created these 3 different instances, and that's how this is created. Okay, now in case of the first test case, I'll expand this and I'll go to the test sheet. See, in case of first test instance, I've entered FN Asia, world, and 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, now if I'll closely take a look at the first test case which is created, okay, it contains all the steps, and in this particular step, if you take a look, it is taking the exact data what we have passed here. So FN Asia, world, and 1 2 3 4 5 6 is coming. Okay, however, in case of America, if I go to the second test case and if I go this checkout info page, here you see FN America, world, and 789456 is coming. Okay, so if I add one more instance, we'll talk about that, because there is one concept, reinstantiation, which we'll cover in this quickly. Okay, so now our test case is created. Okay, now wherever I want to run this, I can use this particular test cases to run this. Okay, so there should be a lot of different wait time, because we have not considered like if the script could fail because of script lag or all those issues, but we'll take a look. I'll run this test case, we'll see how it performs, and we'll fix if there are any issues. So it has launched the URL, it is going to enter the username and password. Now the username and password is already part of the template. Now it is clicked in add to cart, and take a note on this FN Asia, world, 1 2 3 4 5 6, and click on finish, and then it will close the browser. I have mentioned that. We'll see if it performs. We'll wait for this execution to get finished. Okay, so we have some issue. We'll see what the issue is. But what we were trying to achieve is already okay. So I was not sure initially what is the title of this. The title is Swag Labs, and I have mentioned swag not found. Let me go to my close browser. I can mention this asterisk and this should work. I'll just run this test step. I'm just validating if it is going to work or not. Okay, so it has worked for us. It's just that I've just entered swag and this asterisk was missing, the wildcard. Okay, now I can run this as to how many times I want. Okay, for Americas I can run, for Europe I can run. Okay, now let's understand another concept. In it is going to be part of the instances as well, which is called as reinstantiation. Okay, now we have created the structure, we have created template and all. Let's say I've created 50 test cases. Now there is a need to create more. Okay, so what I can do is I can go to template, right click, jump to the schema definition. Okay, and here in case of instances, we were talking about 10 test cases, but in this case we'll try to understand it one. So I'll right click and I'll create one more instance, and I'll write TC004, and the moment I created this instance, this section is popped up. Okay, now since I'm referring the data from here, I need to input the data. Okay, so I can write any garbage value here. I'll write any garbage value here as well. Okay, now what I've done is I have added one instance to this. I'll click on save. Okay, and I'll go to my test cases section. Okay, here if you see in the template instance, however, I have added the fourth instance, that is not populating. Okay, because this instance does not know that I have added this. Okay, in order to do that, so what I'll do is I will right click on this and I'll be able to see the option called reinstantiate instance. What does this mean is it is going to recheck again, and if there is something updated, deleted in the same instances or a new instance is added, that is going to be taken care by this. So latest updates it is going to take. So if I'll click on this, you'll see TC004 is going to get populated. See, this is populated. So in this way we can add, or let's say I wanted to just update few things in this, that can also be done using reinstantiation. But in case you're doing any changes in the test case design section, you need to reinstantiate for that changes to reflect here. It will not be taken care of it automatically. Okay, now let me we'll keep this anyways. So just to summarize this concept from template creation to this 3 chapters. So you create your test cases as it whenever it is required. Now whenever based on data things are going to change, in those cases you create the test case design. Now for the first step is to create your test case, convert it to template, create your test case design, input your data parameters, and then link the template with the TCD by dragging and dropping the TCD to the template, and then whatever your data parameters are there, you will link those, and then you will right click on this and you'll click on the 3 dots, check the template is fine, then click on these 3 dots and then create the instance. I hope this was helpful, and in case not, try to rewatch it wherever you have missed it, but I've covered all 3 portions of this. Okay, now we'll go ahead with the last chapter, execution list setup. Now I have covered majority of these chapters for you to get an idea on how to work on automation testing using Tosca, and I'm going to create more full-time tutorials as well based on the different topics which we have not covered, but this is going to enable you to create the test cases and with all the basic concepts I have covered here. Okay, now in terms of execution list setup. Let's understand that. Okay, so you should be able to see this execution tab here. However, in case you're not able to see, you understand it by now very well, that you go to this home section, and on the section you'll click and you'll be able to find this execution here. Okay, now till now we were running our test cases in the scratchbook. So what happens is, in case of scratchbook, the execution does not get saved. Okay, it is used for debugging. Okay, however, the last execution we will be able to see. So if I'll click on the scratchbook here, I'll be able to see whatever last I have executed. But before that, whatever I have executed is not going to be listed here, and I'm not going to have able to see all those things. So I cannot understand what all has happened. So this is only used for debugging. Okay. Now, in case of execution, here you will create the list. Okay. So it is very easy in Tosca. You will find this different things called execution list, exploratory, interactive, and all these things. We are going to discuss about different things at a later point in time, but our focus is right now on the execution list. So here you have few things. You can skip these. We'll understand how to create execution list. So you just come to execution list, you right click, and here you'll be able to see the option to create a folder or create execution list. So always a good idea to structure your everything in your project nicely. So I'll create a folder first. I can write a demo and right click and then create a execution list in this. Okay. Now in case of interviews and all, sometimes they ask the shortcuts as well. So you can see for the execution list is Control N plus Control E. Okay. Now you can rename this execution list. I can write Tosca beginners course, and here you'll see nothing is there. Okay, now it is very easy. You go to your test cases. Okay, and I can drag and drop. Now let's say I want this instance, so I'll drag, go to the execution list, and I'll drop in this execution list. Okay, so this was the template instance, and you see all my test cases are here. Okay, now in case of like this was instance thing, but let's say I want a normal test script, I can just drag and drop this to the execution, and I can put in this, and it is going to create so it has created a new execution list. Let me delete this because I've put it in this demo. In case I want it inside this, I can drag and drop this thing here, or I can create different lists here as to whatever my need is. Okay, now in case I want to run all the test cases in one go, I can right click and run using this, or I can execute a single test case as well. So let's say let me validate. Okay, so this is closed. So I'll quickly run one. So here the same option F6 is used. So if I'll click on run, what it is going to do is it is going to keep the log of this particular execution, and you'll be able to monitor at a later point of time what all things have happened. Okay, so we'll just let this execution get finished. Okay, so our execution is passed. Here if you'll see on the left hand side now, these are not displaying anything, so that means it is not executed. But here if you see, it will give you the login info as well, executing on Chrome browser and all these things. And here if you see, if I'll open this, it is going to give me the time, the date, and all those things when it got executed. And if I click on this, it is going to give me all the steps. Okay, now if I make an execution again on this, okay, so what we can do is what I'll do is I will just close the application in between so that we can see the failed test steps as well. So I can go to this and I'll do this so that this particular script fails. So manually I'll just close the browser at some particular step. Okay, we can close it here only. So okay, I will move the mouse. Okay, so Tosca is quickly is very fast. So I have done a keyboard command Alt F4. So now it is trying to steer some value which is it is not finding, so it will fail. We'll just wait for the execution to be failed right now. So in case of execution list, you'll have the option of pass, fail, and no result as well. These are the different options. So here, if you see, if it is fail, it will come as red, and here, if I go here, it will say that whatever issue is there, so no matching tab was found. Okay, and now if I run more instances of this, those all are going to get populated. So I'll be able to understand, okay, at what time what execution happened and how the structure looks like. Okay, now in case we want to set different test configurations, like in terms of browser and all changing and all that, we can set it at execution list level or at this folder level as well. Now whatever I will define here is going to take the most precedence in terms of execution. Okay, we'll understand all these things. In case you guys have issues, do let me know in the comment section and specifically mention where and what issue you're facing, and I'll try to help as much as I can. But this is how the execution list is prepared. Now one thing to notice, let's say you are doing some changes in your test steps here. Okay, you can always click on this and update all and all those things, but in case of execution list, you will right click and you will find this option called synchronize now. Okay, so in case you're doing any changes, you should always come here and click on the synchronize. So what will happen is whatever changes you have done here are going to get reflected here, and then your test case is going to take the latest updated changes what you have done and get executed. Okay, so guys, let me know how you find this course. I have covered all the 20 different chapters in this, and this is a long tutorial, so I hope this has helped. In case this has helped, do like, share and subscribe, and uh, thank you very much. Have a great day. Happy learning. Bye bye.